It's the afternoon of February 22nd, the 22nd day of this trial. This whole week, the dates are just going to line up, and I'm kind of living for it. I am just so tired. This morning started out with the defense talking about whether or not Alec Murdaugh is going to testify tomorrow. That is a very interesting development. I don't know if he will or won't. I'm going to put a chat up in the poll to see what you think. And then we started to see the footprint tire tread expert. The state, you think they would have learned yesterday to be careful on what they qualify an expert in, but they qualified this expert in multiple spots, including crime scenes. But the state only asked about tire tread, and it's just wild that they're kind of ignoring what's going on with the defense experts. The defense has been very good about qualifying experts in multiple categories. So we're going to do that. I'm going to put a poll up in the chat. We're going to put a chat up in the poll. Look, I really was mentally prepared for a 3-week trial. I was emotionally prepared for a 3-week trial. I feel so badly for this jury. The attorneys don't seem to care at all. They're doing their case. They're in their thing. Creighton is just living his best cross-examination moment and is so happy to be doing these cross-examinations. He's not thinking, I don't think, about how fatigued this jury is, and the jury will start to hold it against him. But we live here now. We absolutely do. So don't worry. I won't leave you without a feed. I've got to pop over to teach a CLE this afternoon. That's a chat with myself and Lawyer Lamore, over mostly on TikTok, but here on YouTube as well. And then Christopher Melcher, that again, I signed up for just ages and ages ago. So that's what I'm doing, but I'll only be gone for about an hour. Oh, let me make sure that we are shared screen. So when the judge says bring the jury, we can just hear it. I don't have any audio. Why? There we go. And then I will share that as well, so you can see where I am this afternoon if you want to, but I think you probably want to watch trial, and then you can watch that on the replay. It's fair. Can Dr. B hang with you? No, he's teaching a class. He teaches at a local dental school, so he's teaching. But no, I can't. I told the bar that I would not kind of compete with the bar stream, so I cannot. I will only be gone for about an hour. But I also want to let the stream stay up. But I told them I would not compete with the bar stream, and that's fair. So I'm just going to leave the feed up. I'll be gone for about an hour from 2:30 to 3:30 Central, and then I'll be back for the last hour of the day. They're bringing the jury, so let's bring it.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not. Let's get into it.
So I am teaching a CLE for the Beverly Hills Bar Association with 2 other attorneys. The Beverly Hills Bar Association is one of many voluntary bar associations. It's not like the California State Bar. It doesn't regulate attorneys. It gives the continuing legal education and things like that, please. So.
Please support, Your Honor. So, Mr. Zercie, before we broke for lunch, we were talking about how one would process. We showed a floor that you sprayed some chemical, I can't remember what the name of it is,
yes, sir,
which would bring out previously invisible imprints of feet. You could do the same thing for fingerprints?
yes, sir. Or it would enhance what you can see already.
I'm sorry?
It would enhance what you could see already.
All right. But it would also bring out things that you can't see.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about crime scene processing. Let me, we could bring a video up, please, and y'all need to cover your screens, please. And that TV's off? Okay. Everything done? I think we want to do stage number 1. Okay, we'll start that, please. Can you play that for us, please?
I don't know what they're playing. I'm assuming it's crime scene footage on redacted. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like unredacted crime scene footage.
This side of it. You got one here to the officer. Well, the dad's over there. Actually, hold on. The people just won't do it.
Fire rescue might have some more sheets we can steal.
That's right. It shouldn't be.
Okay, so you recognize that is Paul Murdaugh's body covered by a sheet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we just saw some officers apparently taking that sheet off. This officer in particular stepped inside the feed room. Objection. Has that officer stepped inside the feed room?
You got to wait till the court
The one on the
rules.
extreme right of the image, yes.
Poot at the extreme right of the image.
And did you notice any protective covering on their feet?
No, sir.
And I call them booties. What do you call them?
Shoe cots or booties.
What?
Shoe cots or booties.
Oh, booties, okay. And is that, what if anything is, under the procedures you understand, is the purpose of those?
It's to keep your shoes from contaminating the scene with any residue that may be on them. And secondly, also not to allow the imprint pattern from your footwear to contaminate the scene.
Okay. Is that procedure that you teach? Is that procedure that's accepted? Is that, what is that?
It's standard operating procedure.
Standard operating procedure around the world?
It should be, yes.
What?
Okay.
It should be.
Now, go forward with it, please.
There is his law partner.
You can see that officer has 2 feet inside the feed room?
Yes, sir.
No booties?
Correct.
Okay, keep going.
I don't think you can fit it in 300 blackout under there. Not unless it's the shortest 300 blackouts ever been made.
So they are picking through what the officers did in the crime scene. The jurors
I haven't
can
asked Dad
see
about the
this.
phone, but Dad did say he came over and checked their pulses. Beyond that, I don't know what else he may have done.
No, I'm on with customer service on bandwidth issues on the website because the law nerds are incredible. And my website service provider has not
He
been
did
able
have
to
a
keep up
shotgun with him, and I have
with our
secured that in my
traffic.
vehicle.
Yeah, but.
So that was what that pop was.
Yeah, but that's, yeah, but that's.
Let's go to McDowell body cam, stage 6. And that was, for the record, Green's body cam, stage 1.
There is parts next to him there.
All I want to do is see if I can get where you can lift it on each corner. Lift it that way. You go right here to the office.
So the dad's over there.
All I want you to do.
Fire rescue might have some more sheets.
That's okay. That's all right. It shouldn't be anybody fire rescue right here. Listen.
There is his law partner is back there.
Stop it and ask him. Should you
Is
have
that
kicked
the
him out?
same shot, but shot from inside the feed room?
Why aren't
It
we
appears
kicking
to
out
be
the law
yes.
partner?
Thank you. You can turn that off. So let me ask you a couple questions about what we've just seen.
Yes, sir.
You indicated just a moment ago that they should have had booties on, and you've explained why.
As a basic precaution so that they don't contaminate the scene, and also the scene doesn't contaminate them.
Let's talk about that sheet that was on Paul's body.
Yes, sir.
Tell us, first, would you use a sheet to cover a body
Depends on the circumstance.
under
If-
these circumstances?
Under these, in that the victim is not in a public access area,
Right?
possibly. If there were other signs of contamination. In the last video, you could see raindrops coming down. But instead of a porous sheet, I'd probably use a tarp of some sort.
Something that's not absorbent?
Correct. And as a last resort.
And why would you not want to use something that was absorbent?
Well, one, because it absorbs, but it absorbs both ways. The water hitting on the sheet would go into the matrix of the material, and anything that's under it, or
makes
in this
sense.
case on Paul's body, could also be absorbed up into the sheet, whether it's
Paul
blood or
was
the
covered
biological fluids that might be
later.
present.
So
And if you had
Paul
used
was
the sheet
covered at
or
some
any other
point.
material, would you,
The
once
reason
you're
Maggie's
done
hair
using
wasn't-
it, would you discard it?
wasn't wet
or
is
would you
because
save
they
it
put an easy
and have
up
it
over
analyzed,
Maggie.
and why?
It
But
should
they were
be preserved,
fighting
and
against
it
the
should go
rain.
with the remains, all right, presumably to the medical examiner's office, and then be turned over to whoever the investigating agencies are, all right, for further analysis.
And what would you be looking for?
Because there's physical contact between the sheet and the victim's body, any trace evidence such as hairs, fibers, or other materials that may be loose could be picked up, especially when it becomes moist. All right, it now becomes like a sponge and actually picks things up and takes it away. You don't know what's not there.
So, let me understand this. If somebody had walked by, let's say the assailant, had walked by that body, and we're all losing hair all the time, some of us more than others.
Me.
But
All
if
the-
you
you
run
should
your
see my
hand through your hair,
shower.
you'll lose hairs, right?
Yes, sir.
And if the assailant walked by there, and it looks like he was, the assailant, I think everyone agrees, was relatively close on that second shot anyway.
Objection.
In a
Objection is sustained.
In a hypothetical, if the assailant was close to somebody and walked by them, is there a possibility, probability that hair or other trace evidence from the assailant would end up under that sheet and between the sheet and Paul's body?
It's possible, yes.
What if someone checked
Now, with the
their
possibility,
body for
Is that the
pulse,
reason you
though?
say save the sheet and have it processed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's also talk about, first of all, you've read all the records in
First
this
of all,
case. You looked at all the evidence that was
let me ask
taken
you.
from the scene.
Let me-
You find
let me
any
go-
record that that sheet was saved,
I saw no indication of it, no, sir.
okay, or processed?
Correct.
Paul's clothes. He was clothed. What should be done with those?
Again, once they're removed from the victim, whether it's done at the medical examiner's office or at another location, again, they should be submitted to the laboratory for analysis. And again, it would be trace transfer evidence, hairs, fibers, or other materials, as
I
well
know,
as
they
any
didn't
of the
save it.
wound patterns that would appear on the outer garments themselves. Looking for things like gunshot residue, pattern analysis. It would be very helpful.
Michelle,
see any
experts are allowed
evidence
to
in any report,
experts are allowed to
of
rely
those
on
clothes
hearsay
being
and forming their
preserved,
expert
let alone
opinions.
examined?
So they're allowed to evaluate it.
With the documents I've been provided, I have not seen any.
Oh, poot a noise.
Now, you've just recommended doing some things in your 30 years of doing crime scene, 20?
40.
I think this is a very
Sorry,
good
I
witness
wanted
for the
to-
defense.
20 years of doing crime scene work, going to crime scenes and preserving evidence. Are these the kinds of things, or these things that you've done on your crime scenes in the past?
Depends on what stage the crime scene is being examined. If it's at the very end, you finished all your documentation, you finished your evidence identification, you finished all your photography, your sketch maps, as long as there's not an exigency, an emergency that's present, and i.e. that would be life safety. If it's been determined, or the presumption of death, in this case from both victims, you can slow the investigation down. Right? There's no longer an emergency to rush through everything, and you take everything through a very systematic approach.
Have you
Try
done
to be
that?
as detailed as possible.
Have you done that in the past?
Yes, sir.
And if this had been your crime scene, would you have saved that sheet and saved his clothes?
Definitely.
I'm sorry?
Definitely.
Okay. Now, let's talk about Maggie, and I'm just going to cut to the chase on this. Maggie had the same kind of sheet over. Would you have done the same thing?
Yes, sir.
You would have saved the sheet, sent it for analysis, saved her clothes, sent it for analysis.
Bagging and tagging each thing separately,
They
so there's no
didn't,
cross-contamination
wait,
between items.
they didn't
Each
tag
item
Maggie's clothes?
bagged
I thought they did.
individually, so there's no cross-contamination.
Correct.
Was that done in her case?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about
If I'm the
See, I'm gonna
state,
try
I
to
might lean into,
expedite
you're right,
this a
SLED
little bit.
didn't do everything they can in argument and argue They were afraid of Alec Murdaugh. And they didn't do the best they could. I might
Okay,
just
let's
lean
go
in. I don't know
to-
why
let's
the
go to
AG's
the
office
Alamo,
feels the
please.
need to protect SLED and say, look, there are things that could have been done better. But it didn't contaminate the things that were done. And the things that were done properly. There were other things that should have been done. But it doesn't contaminate the
Stage
things that
39
were
for the
done.
record.
And lean in that way. I don't know what they're going to do. If they get defensive, the jury's going to be like, oh, fuck off. They're not going to hear any of it.
Now, you understand, what do you understand this to be?
Oh, I agree. That's
It's
a
a
SLED problem.
photograph, and it's
But
from
right
a
now, it's the
report
AG's
from
problem.
Agent Worley from SLED.
This is of the feed room floor?
And the AG, if the AG
Yes, sir,
gets
it is.
defensive about it,
Okay,
the jury's
now,
going to be like,
earlier
why
we
are you
saw
protecting
you,
them? They didn't do what they should have.
Spray some things on a murder scene in New York. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Have you, I think Agent Worley
If you spray some
identified
things on a murder
or
scene in New
testified
York,
that,
does
in
it
her opinion,
does it
based
prove
on
a financial
her
case in
experience
South
footwear,
Carolina? What food are you
that
doing?
Paul's shoes were in here somewhere. Is that correct?
A pattern similar to the shoes that Paul was wearing is present, yes.
Okay. Now, did she also indicate
Some
that she
self-awareness
also
would help.
found patterns consistent with one of the law enforcement officer's shoes?
Yes, sir, she did.
That may very well have been the guy we saw step into the feed room, right?
Possible.
Okay. Now, if you had come on this crime scene and saw this, would you felt compelled to do more that we've heard from Agent Worley?
For several reasons, yes.
Okay. First of all, what would you have done and why would you have done it?
I wouldn't have walked into the room.
Okay.
You
Okay.
How
stand
would you have
back,
cleared
make
the
your
scene, though?
observations, and you determine a course
Wait.
of action.
How would you have cleared the scene if there is 2 people dead and unknown if there's a shooter on scene? How would you have cleared it if you don't walk in? That's my only question.
Action. And everything is done in a sequence at a crime scene. All right, again, the first part is viewing it, using a visual examination. Once you've identified areas
Clearing
of
it.
interest, then
You
you
have to
determine the
clear it
methodology
first.
that you're going to use.
You have to
either
clear it
collect,
first.
Seize, document, all right, the type of evidence that might be there.
So what would you have done? If you looked in the door and you see this, what do you do?
I would have started from the doorway.
You
and
clear
worked
it for
towards the back
safety
of the
for
room, in that it's
first
a small
responders
enclosed
first.
area. So you work from front to back.
When you say work from front to back, what do you mean work? What would you do is right inside the door?
I mean,
or
I
right
agree with,
outside the door?
we agree with front to
You
back.
would start
Great.
documenting with close-ups, and in the
Photographs.
case, yes, sir, that there's an imprint just to the right of the door. That would be my first area to do detailed photography and imaging, right, for later comparison.
And
Which
as you
does
work
not
your way
work
back,
if
are
there's
you
still
careful
an
not to
active shooter.
Step anywhere? You're wearing booties? What are you doing?
You're wearing the shoe cots or booties. In addition to that, we would usually build a bridge. Basically take 2 2x4s, lay them in
The
an area.
state will
where there
ask
were
about
no
scene
imprints.
safety. He's just
Put a
ignoring
piece
it.
of plywood and actually stand on that.
And I don't know why he's
so that you're
ignoring
not
it. I think he
standing
could
on the
address it well.
surface that the imprints are on. There are commercial products that are available that look like Tupperware boxes that you can literally stand on and do the same thing. So it preserves and protects the area.
You
that
can't
you're
do any of
interested
that
in doing the detailed work.
if there's
that
an
you may be
active
able to get
shooter,
more
though.
evidentiary information from.
And once you've done those photographs,
Sorry, I'm
all
trying
the
not to
way
be
back,
fixated.
What do you do next?
In this case, once the initial photographs were taken, determine if chemical processing is necessary, or could I seize the item? In this case, it appears that these imprints are on a concrete base. It's a little difficult to take the entire concrete foundation and remove it, but it has been done before. In this case, again,
Poot
now we
is
work from
keeping a
back
close
towards the
eye on how the
front,
jury is receiving
using
this.
some type of enhancement reagent to try to increase the amount of detail and the
that-
clarity.
That agent is what you sprayed in New York on the floor.
That would be one of them, yes.
Those images that aren't visible to the naked eye.
Even if some of the image is visible, it can give you additional detail in the periphery or other area where there's just trace amounts.
Okay. And you work your way to the front, taking pictures as you spray?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, once you've finished that, are you done with the floor?
No, sir.
What's now? What do you do now?
You want to take overviews to show the work that you have done, right, and show any modifications that you made to the scene. And again, make the determination, can I take the area that that print's on with me? If it was a tile floor, we could pull the tiles up. But again, because it's on concrete.
It's
it
harder. They're
we'd
not
have to
cutting the
rely on
concrete out.
documentation.
And these are still 90-degree straight-down shots?
That would be the analysis part. You would still take general photographs on an angle showing the relationship
But as you worked your way up and worked your way back, those would be vertical, I mean,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Those would be yours.
And then you're taking general photos from different angles.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then what?
With digital, you would make sure that the photos came out, that you had an image captured, and that it was sufficient for whose ever needs.
Okay, now, let's,
You would also take a sample of the blood from those areas for later typing or DNA analysis, should it be necessary.
did you find any evidence?
Preserve as
that they
much as you
took a
can,
sample
yes.
Of this blood and analyzed it?
No, sir.
So we surmise it's Paul's blood, but it could be somebody else's blood there too?
Possible.
And the only way you could rule that out is take samples?
Is to take a sample, do an
They
analysis,
didn't
and
talk
try to
about what you have
identify
to
the
do to
donor.
rule out an active threat, because the
And that
first,
was never done?
To the best of my knowledge, no, sir.
the first Colton
Okay.
County
So then,
sheriff that
we
showed
have,
up said he had to check the scene
a
and
number
secure
of
the scene.
surfaces.
And he's the one that I think they first saw. If
Let me,
there's,
have them put up,
if after the scene is secure, officers are
26.
walking all over the place, it's different.
States 26.
They did. SLED brought in their crime scene team. Worley was from the SLED crime scene team. They're having a battle of the experts over how they would have
Okay,
done it.
so, and just to cut to the chase, this is the door to the, well,
It's the door to the what?
there you go. That's the door to the feed room?
Yes, sir. The door frame on the right, door on the left.
Okay, did you see any evidence that they not dusted, that's old-timey language, that they processed that door or any other surface
It is old-timey
in the
language.
feed room for fingerprints?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Now, tell the jury, please,
It's not as
In
delightful
a
as an
summary
old-timey
fashion,
bathing suit in the
what
Himalayas,
you
but
would
it
have
is
done.
old-timey language,
well,
poot.
first of all, do you have to see a fingerprint before you lift it or whatever you call that?
No, sir.
So how do you determine whether or not they're fingerprints you can't see? What do you do?
The base processing methods, again, depend on what technologies the agency has. The simplest and the oldest is dusting with contrasting color fingerprint powder and a brush by just applying it to the surface and dusting it through. If a finger or palm or foot or toe has come in contact with those areas, the secretions from the ridge detail, right, leaves a pattern behind. Those latent fingerprints now become patent or visible. They can be lifted, they can be photographed. They also help tell you what was touched and how things were handled. So it would help in a reconstruction as well.
That's the oldest technology there is, though, right? The throwing dust down, fingerprint dust?
At a crime scene, yeah.
Okay. I'm not talking about going into the lab and using
No.
super glue or
I didn't know
whatever.
that.
Say, at the crime scene.
Yes, sir.
What is the
That's a
more
very fair
modern? Do
point.
you use lights or do you use chemicals? What do you do at the scene?
The first method would be to use an alternate light source.
What does that mean?
It
Alternate
could be
light
anything
source.
from a flashlight held at an oblique angle to see if you can find any smudges or smears. More sophisticated portable laser units, right? Laser is an acronym for a light source that produces a wavelength of light at a very specific number. The more common today are called the alternate light sources. These are various colored lights, and usually they're light-emitting diodes or LEDs at different wavelengths of light. So in concert with a pair of glasses that are filtered, you can get a shift and you may be able to pick up fluorescence or luminescence. One of the problems is that our secretions, the oils, the fats, and the
Wait, my fingers might luminesce?
salts don't reflect. They don't give off light. So you would need to process those, if you discovered one, with some type of chemical staining that would act as a fluorescent. And essentially, it would be similar to my watch, that when it's dark, it glows.
So are these new technologies or, I mean, is something space age
The-
stuff or has it been around for a while?
Are we
The
still in
light
the
source
space age?
technology has
We're in
become
the internet
simpler and
age.
simpler. It's now battery powered. Literally, it's a very simplified flashlight. There are also very sophisticated ones. The technology's been around for about 25,
Happy birthday,
almost
Janet
30
Dick.
years.
Okay, and not uncommon to be available to law enforcement labs?
No, sir.
My cousin
I would
Benny is
expect
getting
every
ready for his
laboratory
cross.
to have some type of alternate light source.
Okay,
And
now-
the oldest traditional is ultraviolet.
Ultraviolet's a black light?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so simple mobile.
Ultraviolet might be my next hair color as
Mobile
well.
black light, you could look at. and-
Scanning the surface to see if it gives you any information.
Okay. And if you didn't use the powder or the light, what else? What else could you do?
There's chemical fuming stains that you can use, and the simplest is super glue or cyanoacrylic
These-
acetate ester.
The
Can you do that on
fingerprint
a scene?
expert testified
With a door
about
like
this.
that, if
at
I chose to do that,
length.
literally, you could bag the entire area,
At length.
place a super glue packet or super glue with an accelerant in it, inside the chamber, now inside the plastic bag, and fume the entire door. The other would be to take the door with you and process it
But that
later.
takes a while, doesn't it? The super glue process?
Not necessarily.
On TV, it
Maybe
goes very fast.
Half hour, 25 minutes.
Okay. And could you spray it with something else?
Again, the same reagents that we used on the footprints to make those visible, where there was limited amounts of blood-like material, could also be used there.
And you could do that on the door, you could do that on the door frame, you could do that on any object, the methods you've talked about, on any object, literally, in that room.
I'm waiting
Yes,
for
sir.
somebody to be like, I have nipples.
Did you see
Could
any
you milk
evidence
me?
of any fingerprints, any effort to lift fingerprints, when I say lift, to identify fingerprints in that room or anywhere else
I wonder if he
on the
heard the
property that
testimony
night?
of the fingerprint guy.
not
The
to the
fingerprint
best of
guy was
my
very
knowledge.
thorough. He found nothing,
Okay.
but he was very thorough. Or he seemed thorough to me.
Let me talk just for a minute about,
The sled agents
one I
back
want.
here, the
here we go.
sled investigators watching this seem
How
thrilled.
about put
all of them.
190, states 195 up, please?
Sorry, as I'm finishing lunch, I was fixing a website over lunch because that's how my days go. But this is
Maybe
a battle of the
see if we
experts.
can Tune that in a little bit.
Oh,
There we
Buster's
go.
sitting
Now
way
how about
back
make it
today.
closer?
But this is a battle
No,
of
the other way.
who did what, who didn't do
Okay.
what,
Tell me what
and
this
it's
is,
to be
please.
expected.
It appears to be a photograph of multiple footwear impressions, three-dimensional renderings in a soft surface.
Okay, and this picture was taken, do you remember who took it?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. And they have a document here that'll help you with that. I can't remember.
Friday Ketchup said,
Let me
how many
suggest
beards in the
this,
audience?
just
The
cut
limit
chase.
does
You
not
remember
exist.
reading a
The
statement,
limit does not exist.
concerning Solicitor Duffy Stone.
Yes, sir.
Is that picture taken by the solicitor?
I couldn't remember his name.
Why
I
the
believe
fuck
so.
is the solicitor taking crime
And,
scene
it was
photos?
taken on the night of June 7th.
The
That's the
level of
indication in the
fuckery.
letter.
Okay.
They're going to
So,
have to
tell
talk
me
about
what
it.
you're
I want the
looking at.
AG's office to talk about it. They might
Again,
start an
it's a
internal
soft-soiled service.
prosecutorial war.
Someone or some people have been walking through that area multiple times.
And did you attempt to identify any of those footprints by comparing them?
Just by looking at the basic pattern type, the flat surface ones that have relatively no detail, just the outline of the footwear itself, could be consistent with these sandals that Miss Murdaugh was
Mag
wearing.
Murdaugh was wearing. What about these other shoes?
There were no exemplars that I was made aware of taken by SLED to do a comparison or to try to eliminate them.
Could you tell whether Maggie's shoes were walking over the other footprints, or were the other footprints walking over her imprints?
If those are from Maggie Sandals, they're on top of the other ones. But they're also going in two directions, and some are superimposed over the other.
When you say, okay, let me ask the question this way. Are Maggie's imprints on top of the other imprints, or are they on top of hers?
In the area that they appear, yes.
I'm sorry?
And in the area in which they appeared, the answer is yes.
See,
Yes.
the question was compound. That's
They
why
were.
he's saying yes.
They were made there after, right? The
On
heavy
top- Are
mud
they on
pad-
top of Maggie's?
No, Maggie's are on top.
Okay, so the other imprints were there, and Maggie walked on top
So,
of them.
Poot, if you don't ask
Apparently, yes.
compound questions, you're not going to get
Now,
crappy answers. Poot? He didn't want that to be the answer.
Let me see if I can
They're saying
save some time
Maggie
here.
walked on top of the other footprints because it's out in a work area with work boots and all this stuff. The solicitor is the head prosecutor, like the DA, in the area, a position occupied by
Well,
Murdaugh's
you
for almost
have also
100 years,
reviewed the
until Duffy
SLED
Stone came
procedures
on.
manual, correct? Parts of it.
In brief, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay.
He's not an
and,
expert in police policies for
Let
SLED,
me ask you
though.
this. There's certain certifications different labs receive, correct?
Yes, sir.
And
I have
the
ultra seasoning
certification
stuck to my
SLED
lip
receives
gloss.
for their lab, there's an acronym.
The current acronym is ANAB, A-N-A-B.
Okay.
It's the American Board of A-N-A Accreditation. I forget the last word.
He's like, I don't know.
But it's a pickup from an older accreditation program that was run under the ASCLD program, the American Society of Crime Lab Director.
And tell me just briefly how that accreditation program works.
A laboratory or a crime scene unit can apply to this organization for this national, actually it's international, accreditation, which means that they're meeting a minimum criteria and minimum expectations from the
Food
parent
swallowing
body.
a
Right, it's a
yawn
formal
is hilarious to me.
recognition, technically, that you're doing a good job. Or at
He
least
wanted
your
a longer
procedures
lunch
are
for
well
sure.
written. The operation manual that I started reviewing was very thorough, was very well written, very easy to understand. But it involves everything from how evidence is processed in the agency, what the responsibilities of the different people are, including the director of the laboratory, the basic procedures and operation of the lab itself, or the crime scene unit, if it's involved in a police department that may not have a formal
The
laboratory.
journalist behind
The
Alec
accreditation is
also
well
looks like he
recognized
needs
across
a
the
nappy
country,
nap. He's just like,
and
And so you're
if the audience is this board, the jury
certified that
probably
you're
is
meeting
too.
the standards, basically.
that you're following the guidelines that you put, and your guidelines meet a minimum standard, yes.
Yep.
So,
Everyone.
and have you ever performed these analysis? Have you ever been appointed or assigned by this group to do this?
Yes, sir.
To
Under
look at,
ASCLD, the precursor to ANAB, I was also one of their auditors, and we would go to different
I
laboratories.
did not hear that right.
In fact, I did the Columbia Sheriff's Department a number of years ago.
Richland
What'd they
County,
do to it?
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Sheriff's
sir.
Department.
I forget.
So,
What? They're having their
you're
own little
very
private
familiar
conversation.
with the standards are.
Yes, sir.
In reviewing what this file and these pictures and documents, was SLED following the procedures that are required by that certification? On this case?
What I had for procedures were their operation manual, how to run the laboratory and the functionalities.
That's not the
There's
crime scene,
also a
though.
second set of documents called the technical documents for each one of the sections that would further in detail give you the information of how to do things. And as an example, recipes for chemical processing, right? How to put the chemicals together, how to apply them.
Well, they didn't apply any chemicals here,
Again, I didn't see those technical
according to the
procedures.
records. Okay.
This has
I guess what
gotten
I'm saying-
very blurry. Give me 1 sec. We're going to switch and see if the other feed's a little clearer. Just because dude's face is super blurred.
Foot impressions,
There we
correct?
Yes, sir.
You're required to do the 90-degree and then from different directions, right?
In a best-case scenario,
go.
yes.
It's a little better.
Did you see any footwear or foot impression that was taken that way?
Best
No,
case
sir.
scenario. He kind of
Okay.
backed off
All
of that.
of them were from an
In a
angle?
best case scenario.
Yes, sir.
And once you do that, are they suitable? I think we even saw,
Can't leave the witness.
to any of those photographs,
Poots buffering.
which of any of those photographs met the standards required to do a comparison?
None of the ones from around the victims or in the small shed area.
Okay. How many, if any, had that 90-degree on a tripod, if you will, shot? How many?
None of them.
Okay. And as a result of that, were any of them suitable for forensic comparison?
They were suitable for pattern identification, the gross pattern, but not as far as the detailed individualizing accidental characteristic that might be present.
Okay.
And that's what they did.
Based on the reports we have, what effort, if any, was made to take fingerprints at the scene?
None that I observed.
Okay.
None that you observed
does
from
that
what, though?
conduct, either
'Cause
for the footprints
there was a whole bunch of testimony.
or the fingerprints, meet the standards that you use or anybody else is using when they try to evaluate? I'm
Compound?
sorry, I don't understand the objection.
It says anybody else uses. Objection.
Any other department uses.
Overbroad?
Any agency uses. Any
Overbroad?
evaluating
Compound?
agency uses.
There was much more.
Metters
work
and
that
Poot
could
look
have been done.
exhausted. I'm exhausted.
Did they do a terrible job here? He's an expert, I can ask an opinion.
I don't know what their limitations were, and I don't know what the training of the people doing the crime scene processing was. So
I'm
to
not
get-
asking, I'm not asking you the limitations.
That's very
Looking at
fair.
it,
No,
did they
Poot,
do a
he's an
terrible job here?
he's an
Did they do
expert.
a less, terrible's the wrong word. Let me get it more scientific. An adequate job to show the absence
Grace K, we
of
do ship to the UK.
the minimum, the
and we ship,
absence of any other
most things are
evidence.
created within the UK
They
for
do an
shipping to the
adequate
UK,
job.
so you don't
I
have to
don't
pay
believe
taxes.
so.
What?
I don't believe so.
He doesn't believe they
And
did
that's
an
your
adequate job.
Expert opinion.
Correct,
Okay.
that much more could have been done.
More could have been done.
And much more being done might have uncovered additional evidence that would have exculpated Alec Murdaugh, helped prove he's innocent, correct?
Or inculpated somebody else.
Basis for the objection.
Speculation.
No response.
Your Honor,
He's an expert.
It's what, I mean, the
Your Honor,
key
he's an
here is the
expert.
absence of evidence. And certainly the absence of evidence, if there was evidence they could have uncovered that they done this process right, it would have helped at the minimum prove there was another person that did this crime.
Speaking response, if you have one.
He's testifying in addition to speculation.
Well, he is testifying.
He's talking about you,
Objection
Poot.
sustained.
Thank you. Take the court's indulgence one moment.
The thing is, when they object like that, it gives Poot a chance to argue. Poot just told the jury real quickly what his whole argument was, and I don't know if he needs to ask any more questions because the jury's already heard it from the attorney. What the attorneys say is not evidence, but that doesn't limit the jury's ear holes. So, with all of that, Poot has basically said, if they did a better job, they could have proven Alec was innocent. That's not really the defense's job. I don't think there's much more to ask.
Further questions?
Cross-examination.
Please. Yes, sir.
And let's move on to cross with Metters. Metters, and I think they're lining Metters up to Poot's witnesses almost on purpose. I don't know if they could know what witnesses Poot's going to deal with, but it's almost on purpose because Metters and Poot seem to enjoy sparring at one another quite a lot and have a history from what I've heard reported. So it's interesting to see. They said, I thought the expert was very fair, saying, look, I don't know what their limitations were, but no, the job was not adequate. I think that's fine.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Wouldn't you have loved to have been Laura Rutland?
Who?
I'm not sure who Laura Rutland is.
Are you talking about Agent Worley?
You don't know who Laura Rutland is?
No, sir.
Laura Rutland is. It's repetitive.
Mr. Harpootlian asked you if you, and maybe I think he told you, you had read all the records in this case, and you said yes, remember?
No, sir, I've been qualifying that each time he stated it.
I'm sorry, do what?
I have been qualifying that question each time he said that.
Well,
The records that were made available to me,
okay.
the entire case jacket was not made available.
So tell these folks
He
what
was-
was made available to you.
He was limiting Poot,
Photographs from the
saying,
coroner's
you've read
office that were
everything.
taken apparently
Smart.
by a photographer representing them at the scene.
Smart question.
Photographs, I believe, were taken by SLED or an investigative agency. Later, I was
Metters is loving this
recipient of 4
moment.
images, now that I know were taken by the state, well, we call them state's attorneys, district attorney. Copies of the autopsy report, some of SLED's investigative reports, such as the fingerprint section,
So he
which actually
didn't
also did
get
the
everything.
footwear the footwear examinations. Let's see.
So you said that this was only adequate, but you didn't get all the
I
records.
was
So
given
how can you
access
form that
to
opinion?
the
That's a great question. And the
operations
defense set
manual
that up
for
for
SLED.
failure.
Right, and the letter that I just referred to, as far as the origin of some of the photographs.
So you have not read all the records in this case,
Correct.
and you don't know who Laura Rutland is.
No, sir, I don't.
Would
So
it be
how-
important for somebody, well, let me ask you this much. When did you get all that, the reports and the pictures from, when did you receive those in your possession?
Some of them as long as 2 months ago, 3 months ago, others today.
And I spent the weekend looking through some of your background.
Yes, sir.
You provide reports in a lot of cases, don't you?
Yes, sir, I do.
Written reports,
Yes, sir.
what you do,
Didn't
what
do
your
that here.
findings were, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you do that in most cases, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Why
Did
didn't
you
you
do
do
a
that here?
report in this case?
It was not requested.
Okay, well, so are you taking notes and are you just doing all that from memory up there?
Testimony so
Others
far has
today.
been more about procedural issues and the specifics of things that I've already reviewed.
I
It
understand
makes
that, but that
it,
wouldn't answer my question respectfully. Have you done a report for yourself?
Do I have notes that I was taking? Yes. Do I
You
have
have
copies
those?
of the, do I have them with me?
Yes, sir.
Strictly what's on my computer,
You gonna provide those to me?
if you wish.
Entitled to reports, not his notes. He's not entitled to Brady. He's not entitled to anything
He is
but
entitled
a
to notes.
report under Rule 5.
Oh.
And there is no such thing.
so you didn't ask for a report?
You said you wish. You just told me I
I
could have
didn't
them.
ask for argument. The objection's overruled.
You said I can look at them?
So,
They're not physically here, but whatever I have at another
Oh, shit.
location, you're more than welcome to.
You said you had them on your computer.
Not all the handwritten notes.
it just makes
Right.
it look
Any
like
of
the
the
defense
documentation I was
didn't
given
ask for a
was
report
by
so that the
virtue of
prosecution couldn't get it.
Digital copies.
Whether it's really a nothing burger or
Have
not
something on your
doesn't
computer
matter,
up there. You actually motioned
but
for
it makes it look like the defense is being shady.
You have some on your computer up there. You
Not the
motioned
actual
for it.
notes, no. I have the actual documents I received to review. The handwritten notes or any of the notations on images or photographs are at another location.
When did you prepare? We got the PowerPoint last night about 10 o'clock. When did you prepare that?
Which one?
Was there more than one?
There were two.
Where's the other one?
They were both shown.
What?
Those were two PowerPoints?
There were two separate ones, yes. I take it back. I was mistaken.
You're what? What'd you just say?
I said I was mistaken.
Okay.
There was one PowerPoint, there were two sections to it.
And when did you provide
That's
that?
fair.
Probably a week ago.
And you just said you were mistaken. You have made mistakes in your life, haven't
Yes, sir. I have an eraser on my pencil.
you?
That is a great answer.
And I'm old school, you're old school, and I don't mean that bad.
Thank you.
And when you were around investigating crime scene years ago, you didn't wear booties every time you were on a crime scene.
Look, he's not touching up on this witness, just
When I
saying.
started doing crime scenes, they weren't part of the equipment.
So my
As
answer-
technology has come along, the fear of contamination, they become standard operating procedures.
But you have not always wore foot protection when you were on a crime scene, have you?
Going back 20, 30, 40 years ago, no, sir.
You still convicted people.
You've made mistakes before.
As everyone in this room, yes.
I
Yes.
like that he's not backing away from the answers as an expert. He's standing his ground. I was only provided this. I only
Well,
did
as you
that.
just did a
He
minute ago,
doesn't
too.
seem
Can I pull up one,
defensive.
Whoever's,
And that makes him come across, I think, as a more credible witness because he doesn't
you
seem
pull up something
defensive.
for
He's
me?
not trying to fight with matters. He's just answering the
195,
question
please.
clearly. But I'm stealing
If you're
that.
not- you're not-
You've made mistakes before. I have an eraser on my pencil. The thing is, giving the expert limited records, even if it's not meant to be shady, looks and feels shady, which was a great line of questioning by the prosecution. For those of you saying he's deflecting, though, of course he is. He's an expert. He's going to do that a little bit. But he doesn't come across as evasive. Some of the prosecution's witnesses came across as a little evasive. Some of the defenses will too on cross-examination. But it's a good question to start with. You formed the opinion that this investigation wasn't ideal, but you don't even have all the records. And I might have sat down at that.
And asked you about states 195.
Yes, sir.
And it's important when these footprints were put on here, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And you know who first saw those footprints?
No, sir.
You don't, that's right. It's Laura Rutland. Would it have been important to you to come in, and you're basically second guessing the Colleton County Sheriff's Department,
Yep.
the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division,
Yep.
Well, you're being paid to come in and say they did a bad job.
That's what he was hired to do.
I even qualified that answer. Depending on the limitations of their skill sets, depending on the limitations of equipment that they have in their training, they may have done the best job they could.
But you're second guessing the Colleton County Sheriff's Department and SLED and saying they did a bad job, did you?
With that particular image,
Well, no, you've said it about the whole thing.
Have you finished your answer?
He did say it about the whole
Go ahead,
thing.
I'm sorry.
are you referring to this image or the
Right,
entire?
okay,
inve-
yes, sir.
As far as that picture goes, it's a good general overview documentation of an area without additional photographs, which I know there were 4 in the series, if I'm not mistaken. All right, it does show this area in concert with a portion of the crime scene.
And now
That
the
can be
witness is
equated
narrowing
back to
down
one
what
of
he
the
didn't think
diagrams
was
that
great,
prepared.
which is good for the
This
prosecution.
particular picture is a medium close-up showing a particular area.
But I
as
also
tried
think
to
there were
explain
things in this
with
investigation
the
that were way
photography,
sloppy.
Showing
And I think if the prosecution,
multiple images
if
and
the
how they relate
prosecution
to one
tries
another.
to say,
The other photograph would
this
show
was a
how it
great
relates to the
investigation,
scene.
all of us are going to
The
go,
part that's
ugh.
missing are the macro or the close-up photographs
he has to be
showing
careful.
the detail of the images, so that should a pair of shoes or article of footwear be available, they could then be directly compared and analyzed and either included or excluded from consideration in the case.
I think that's fair.
And if you had a witness, let me just ask, if
I like this, I like
you're
this
giving an opinion
expert.
up here and evaluating the crime scene, wouldn't you want to know if there was a witness who saw this image when they were just the sandals on it? Wouldn't you want to know that if you were evaluating, second guessing whether a law enforcement did a good job? Wouldn't you want to know that?
It would be helpful, but that's not what I was presented with.
You weren't even presented with that.
I was presented with a photograph and asked to
that's not
interpret
his
what's
fault.
there.
But if
That's
there's
the
a witness who
defense's
said,
fault.
I saw those and they were just those sandal prints and nothing else there, you'd want to know that.
First off, I'm not an investigator. I don't do interviews. I don't talk to people about what they did or saw. As a scientist, you evaluate the information that you're given to work with insofar as possible. These images have very limited value for analysis. How they got there, I don't know. An article of footwear came in contact with that surface, as I explained, and left an impression, a 3-dimensional image. As far as who was there, how many people walked through, I don't know. I was not at the
Metters
scene
needs
at
to
the
ask,
time of the incident.
wouldn't you have wanted
nor
the
have I
defense
ever
to
been
give
the
that to
crime
you?
scene.
And
You've never
do
even been
you
to the
know
crime scene.
why?
Correct.
I mean, isn't that important if you're going,
Not for the limited purpose that I was asked to look at the evidence. And as the time had elapsed, there's no way to go back to a scene that occurred 2 years ago.
Sir, what was your
and
limited
try to
purpose? What was
interpret
your limited
evidence
purpose?
That probably no longer
Ask
exists.
ask that. What was your
and-
limited
will
purpose?
you just please answer this one question?
Please.
sir.
If there was information from an individual who saw this scene on June 7th, 21, that when she saw it, there were nothing but the sandal prints and nothing else, wouldn't you want to know that?
Again, as a scientist, I can only deal with what's put in front of me.
This is asked and answered.
I avoid witness statements because of their unreliability.
You're a witness.
An eyewitness who said, I just saw sandals, you wouldn't want to know that?
I would not care.
Would you care
I'm
about
looking-
if you were a beat cop? If you just saw sandals yourself?
I was not a scientist at that point. I was not subject to biased accusations, all right, and undue influence from others.
You talking about Mr. Harpootlian or me?
Both.
He's like, it's science. He's about to start singing.
And
She
the
blinded
reason
me
I'm
with
following
science.
up on that, and I wasn't clear, Mr. Harpootlian said, were these over other imprints or over? They're actually over each other. The sandals are over themselves, the imprints,
I
correct?
said that, yes.
Okay, well, it wasn't clear. You're not saying they were over these other.
It may not have been clear to Mr. Metters, it was clear to me, it was clear to everybody else in the
I
courtroom.
also stated that they're
The
on top.
objection is sustained. The
Objection.
objection is sustained. Examination by the counsel. Cross-examination, not direct examination.
What is
And finally, on
happening?
this topic, Mr. Harpootlian said that these photos were taken on June 7th of 2021, and that's what you thought, correct? That's what you were provided.
The appearance from the letter that was, I believe, attached to those images gave that indication, yes.
Okay. And did it say what? State court's note.
The judge was mad at the prosecution there, not the defense. The judge is over all of these attorneys.
They were actually taken on June
I'm
8th,
just over it.
23 later that day. Did you know that?
Apparently, the person who authored the letter authenticating the photograph was inaccurate.
Who was inaccurate? Huh. I think they needed to go back to, what was your limited purpose then? And they never followed up on the limited purpose. And I get that it's cross-examination, but your limited purpose was just to say, and he could have asked this in cross, your limited purpose was just to say that the crime scene wasn't well done. That's your limited purpose. You're hired to say that, and they
Yes,
didn't
sir.
give you all of the,
Yes,
they
sir,
didn't
I
give
do.
you all the records. And then
with that
stop and sit down.
objection, 565.
This guy's a good expert. The jury's going to like him.
No objection, Your Honor.
Admitted without objection.
Now, Mr. Zercie,
But he gets too excited about
Looking at,
cross-examining and getting his,
I think it states
Moments,
139,
and then he
this
doesn't
now
fucking
states
stop.
565. Using common sense, are those consistent with this?
It's the nature of objection.
He's an
The
expert
legal
witness.
basis for the
The
objection.
legal basis is he's applying the wrong standard, common sense. He's a scientist. He can make a comparison scientifically.
let him answer the question.
In general pattern design, this pair of sandals possibly made the smooth imprints that appear in the picture. However, I cannot tell you size, right, or individual patterns, as the images here, again, were not
Metters is
recorded
being
properly,
awkward.
if that's what they were. There are similarities to basic pattern design to these shoes.
Yes, the defense
You'd have
objected to
said that,
common
I'm
sense.
sorry,
That
you'd have
happened.
said that as a beat cop 40 years ago, and same thing right now today, wouldn't you?
Except now I have to do it as an expert witness, which is much different.
It is different. I would ask, well, I wouldn't ask him much more.
Yes, sir.
How much are you getting paid an hour?
That I would ask. I got chips on me, and I gotta
The
go
base
teach.
fee was $350 an hour,
I'm sorry?
$350 an hour.
That's the base.
Yes, sir.
You get paid for travel?
Yes, sir.
How much?
This time, strictly the airfare.
Okay, you don't get paid while you're traveling?
No, I'm not charging for time.
Why?
You usually do?
Again, depends on the circumstances.
And you know I gotta ask this.
That's okay.
Do you get paid more for sitting in that chair than you do for not being? Inside the courtroom, testimony costs more than outside?
It's the same fee.
$350.
Good.
It's a basic 10-hour charge for testimony.
And how many hours have you logged so far?
Total 20, plus today and, the travel. But I'm not charging for the travel time.
And is there extra charge for the PowerPoint?
No, sir, it's all part of the
Hourly rate.
examination.
I appreciate that he's like, look, man, $350 is not outrageous, but it's a common fee. I also wondered if Dick and Jim negotiated that fee because of how many cases they do, and they're like, look, we'll use you in other cases. I wonder if they tried to negotiate that a bit. $350 with his experience does seem low, but we know experts get paid. It's not shocking. All the officers that are sitting in court today are getting paid for their day in court. It's just people get paid, but they're gonna ask. But I like that he said, look, I bill by the hour, and I only build this, and I don't build that, and that's fine. So, I mean, move on. It's not really that big of a deal. Weird Debbie says these attorneys roam around too much. They need a leash. They sure do. They sure do need a leash. What's going on? What are we all talking about? All right, I'm going to answer some questions since we're here. Mama said, notice how the defense isn't trying to prove he's innocent, just trying to prove that everyone else made mistakes. Well, they don't have to prove he's innocent. To be fair, that would be burden shifting. They don't have to prove he's innocent. Poot said it in his opening, which I thought was not great form. They just have to prove that other people didn't do their job. That's really their job, is to prove this. They're saying this was botched to the point where
I'm gonna show you what's marked.
we couldn't tell you if he's innocent or not.
States 559
Oh, I'll get
and
to
558.
that in a minute. I'll talk about lip gloss in a
Zercie,
minute.
Do you recognize those?
Chris
Yes, sir, I
McCurry,
do.
I don't know about the best hot chicken.
558 and 559
I am
without
spice
objection.
averse, but everybody
Without
loves Hattie
objection,
B's.
They admit it.
So Hattie B's is what people love.
560 and 561, Mr. Zercie, do you recognize those?
Yes, sir, I do.
Your Honor, 560 and 561 without objection.
No objection, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
They admit it.
Larry, thank you for the super chat. I see that. Thank you. Blues, I'm ready for some spicy tea. I think Metters should have stopped while he was ahead. There was a time when
Yes, sir, I
surgeons
do.
didn't even wash their hands. We
564
know
without
better, we
objection,
do
Your
better.
Honor.
They admit it.
566,
Yes, sir.
and you're saying yes, sir, that means you recognize them. And
Yes, sir.
566 without objection,
It's a fair question,
objection.
Leanne.
and 557.
Yes, sir.
557 without objection, Your Honor.
He's just like,
Without objection.
They admit it.
562 and 563.
no. Nikki D asked, could Sled be sued for the investigation? No.
Yes, sir, I'm familiar with this report.
Unless
on this
something
one.
comes out
Your
that they
Honor,
did,
562 and 563
they obstructed
without
justice or
objection.
something like that.
Without objection, Your Honor.
They admit it.
$350 does seem a little low, but it might have been,
Mister.
it might have been negotiated.
No problem.
Mr. Zercie. 56, and I'll stand back here so everybody
The
can get-
chat stands by Hattie B's. Oh,
556.
this attorney in
and
his personal space is terrible.
564 are pictures of Paul's shoes and Alex's shoes, correct?
There are photographs taken at the laboratory of the two articles that you mentioned by ownership, apparently.
Okay. Who've been
With-
identified as Paul and Alex's shoes.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. And then what are these, 561 and 560?
Depending on the methodology that was used, either placing a slurry of ink on
They
the
do
bottom of the
zone out.
shoe, rolling it onto
They
a
absolutely do.
contrasting surface, i.e. a piece of paper, of both, you have a set of the left and two sets of the right shoe, all right, to try to record any of the detail that would show in a two-dimensional impression when the shoe comes in contact with the surface.
And that's 589 and 559,
We do
I
need Bill
believe, are
Nye.
the right shoe,
Oh, obviously it will.
and 560
because it will.
561 are the left shoe
But again,
of Alex.
sometimes we
Murdaugh.
gotta do lawyery
You disagree
things.
with that?
No,
Okay. And that's good to do, isn't it?
yes,
No question about that.
it's part of the examination process.
Take a picture of the soles,
Photograph the items,
do an imprint,
life-size, not as represented in those pictures, but yes.
because you're trying to see if they're characteristics,
It's a
correct?
fair cross,
If you have something to compare them to,
and he's
yes.
holding his own on cross. Not ideal, but
There's
not
5
nothing.
criteria: size, shape, wear, pattern, manufacturing, and the final one is individual. The accidental cuts, scratches, gouges, or residue that may be stuck in the bottom of the shoe that would leave a pattern behind.
General class, and then see if you got some kind of individual defect, or I pronate, so that would show on my shoe, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir. And if you supernated, it would too.
Say what? Super, I got you, my bad, I didn't hear you.
Has to do with the way the foot flexes at the ankle.
I understand, I didn't hear you. And 198, 199 are already in evidence. Would you dispute that these were the right and left of Paul?
They were shown to me as representative of that, yes.
And that's good.
Yes,
I mean, that's good law enforcement.
that's part of the examination process, yes, sir.
And what's now been admitted into evidence, SLED's report by Special Agent Worley, 2 reports, one more detailed than the other, where she basically gave her conclusions about looking at these footwear impressions, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you can't disagree with
Rob, if you
anything
get
that
sassy
she
while I'm
did.
gone, though.
No, in fact,
Nightbot
I
might
agree
come
with her
for you, just-
comments about the limitations that were placed on her to do the
Nightbot gets
analysis.
sassy. No caps, no
Pretty good examination,
self-promotion.
wasn't it?
I
No
have no problem
spam.
with it.
You have no problem with it.
No, sir. In
but I know you know that.
regards to the limitations that were placed on her.
Yeah, he should have stopped.
But she tried,
Yes, sir.
and they tried,
Yep.
and they took pictures.
And the pictures that were taken made it difficult, if not impossible, as she states in her report, to draw a positive conclusion in one direction or another, to only be able to give a class characteristic of basic pattern design.
Matters is
She
bumping
wasn't
into things.
basically 90 degrees over it, but the picture was there, still there, correct? She
Pardon?
could still compare these to a picture, couldn't she?
As far as general pattern characteristics, yes.
So they did something more than nothing. I was waiting for a natural breaking point, but we're going to get there soon.
I think Mr. Harpootlian showed you some of these.
I don't know who the next witness will be. I know the mods will take care of it. With that, the mods will be enforcing chat rules. I will be
Not
back
all
after I
enforcing
speak
all.
with the Beverly Hills Bar Association. We will leave this up so we don't have to terminate the stream, so you guys still have our chat. We love our chat. We love the Law Nerds, and we know that you guys like chatting here. So even if the chat is up and you're elsewhere, it won't hurt my feelings. I completely understand. So you guys are welcome to chat. I will leave this up. I will be back in about an hour after I talk at the Beverly Hills Bar Association about, you know, lawyering. Not only do they get their CLE credits, but I get my CLE credits, and it's all well and good. So we'll leave it up so you guys can enjoy the chat. I will be back. With that, the mods are still here, so just know, just know. Let me add the link for the Beverly Hills Bar Association again. The mods will keep adding it if you want
Number
it.
that's on
It
the
will be
sheet,
on a
yes.
replay too, but I promised I would share it.
To the digital
The
photos,
wind
and I
is
think where they're in
just-
here, this is
the wind has
38, got
just-
105.1.
So
You remember looking at these?
I know
Yes,
you guys
sir.
are in good hands.
And 105.2 and 105.3 inside the feed room,
Yes, sir.
and
Y'all
105.5.
have a good one. I'll see you in a little bit.
One 105.1, right here. And did she make that mark and put it on there, 105.5, 105.1?
Yes.
And again, that states 38. What'd she
Again,
say?
to the best of my knowledge, she made that mark.
I understand. What did she conclude about that?
If I could have a report, I'd be happy to read it. Either her report or her work notes, either one.
How about if I hand you this? Ain't got enough room in here, so.
This is from her examination worksheets. Under the,
105.1.
under the accreditation, these notes would have been taken contemporaneous with the examination that she was conducting. All right, now there may be a typed transcript of those. And could you repeat which section again?
You got my mark calculated.
There's a mark on 103.2. And you have an underlined section on 105.1.
105.1. You read my underline section, please.
Strictly that out of context?
No, you read it all. I didn't mean that. You read everything you want. Tell them about what you did. Tell her everything.
No, this is what Agent Worley did. From her examination worksheet dated 6/23/2021, all right, regarding reliability tested, not applied, all right, examination notes, subsection, section 105 for item 105.1. Unknown footwear impression in photograph number 0139. Each photograph that was taken has a specific number assigned to it by the digital cameras, so you can go back to that specific image. Near the feed room door threshold, this would be, to me, it's closest to the entryway itself. The item 105, unknown footwear impression, consists of partial impressions in suspected blood on a cement floor. The outsole design consists of at least 4 rows of parallel rectangular blocks. One block is in a row by itself and appears to be 2 blocks that are joined together, forming more of a V or a U shape. Due to the amount of suspected blood, right, in the impression, it is difficult to determine if those or any of the blocks that appear to be joined together are actually joined in the design, or if the volume of suspected blood is masking the separation of the joints. The sentence with the underlined section, overall, the item 105.1, unknown footwear impression, is consistent with the outsole design of the item 103 right shoe.
That's consistent with Paul's shoe, correct? Assuming Paul's shoe is 103.
It's consistent with that one that's represented, yes.
Thank you.
Okay? Again, this is her opinion.
I understand.
All right, specifically, the unknown impressions appear to be consistent with the 2nd through the 6th rows of the toe end of the outsole. There is barely a noticeable difference between the design of the left and the right shoe. However, there is a slight variation in the slant of the blocks, especially in the middle row of the impression. Additionally, it is the photograph were, if the photographs were true to size, there is an outline of the blocks that would align with the 5th row of the toe end of the shoe, which is obscured in item 103, left shoe, but is clearly visible in the right shoe. Due to the quality, excuse me, of the impression, a more meaningful conclusion cannot be rendered. The item 21 and 95, all right, have been eliminated based on the outsole design.
So,
Those would be Paul's shoes and Maggie's.
so she found that that was consistent with Paul's shoe, correct?
Based on her opinion, yes.
Okay. And I'm not going to go through every one of these, I don't want, but I would just want to briefly go through, did she also on the 105.2 footwear impression, say that Paul's shoes were consistent?
And continues, the lack of clarity in the impression makes it difficult to determine if it was made by the left or the right shoe. Therefore, a more meaningful conclusion cannot be reached. And they were eliminated.
It's consistent, correct? The lack of clarity make it difficult to determine a more meaningful, but it's consistent, correct? They weren't eliminated. Why'd you say that?
I read the next line.
Yeah, but that's item 21 and 95.
Correct.
You were trying to imply that.
No, I wouldn't do that.
You made a mistake?
No.
Well, you said they
The
were
last-
eliminated.
Standing up, badgering this witness next to him. He can read it, he can comment from back here. He's in the doorway, but again, I object.
For clarity.
This moment,
He's been
the
up there.
objection is to you standing in the doorway.
He's been standing up here the whole
No.
time, aimed a gun at us yesterday from here.
Pardon?
He aimed a gun at us from here yesterday.
Good for the goose, good for the gander is a rule, and I can't find it in my rule book.
Well, we're operating with limited space. Just as a matter of trial procedure, it's extremely unusual for counsel to stand in the locations where counsel have been standing throughout the trial. But given the limited space, that's somewhat understandable. But he has moved to the podium. Go right ahead.
Did you misspeak just then?
I did. All right, the last sentence states, the items 21 and 95, the other 2 articles of footwear, are eliminated based on their outsole design
But Paul's wasn't eliminated.
in a very basic way. And because, again, by her report, by what she reports as the contamination issues, all right, blood seeping into other areas, the detail is not there to be definitive. Also, there is no rendering of the size of the image from any of the crime scene photographs. Could it be this big, or could it be this big? I can't eliminate based on size.
And if we could go to 105.3, I'll stay back here and left you a copy there, and I've got a copy.
Yes, sir.
That's the unknown footwear impression represented.
Tell us what exhibit he's looking. No, I mean, what exhibit you just handed him? What did you just hand him?
To the report that you didn't object to.
I don't object to it, I just don't want to know what it is.
It's photograph 29.
It's 1562.
Thank you.
Sorry. I forgot where we were.
105.3.
Thank you. Under 105.3, can you tell me, which is comparing, I'm looking now in states 40, and do you see 105.3 in states 40, and did you review that when you were evaluating this case? And
I
fixing
read
up
the
your opinion?
reports and matched photographs up to the scene, yes. Or the reports, whoops, sorry.
And did Agent Worley conclude that item 105.3 unknown footwear impression is consistent with the outsole design of item 103 right shoe? Did she conclude that?
I just,
Oh, I didn't read it. I picked it up, but it's still up there, sorry.
it cannot be,
105.3.
it just says it cannot be excluded.
Did she say impression is consistent with the outside design of 103 right shoe? In the
Although-
second paragraph.
And continuing, although there is minimal amount of detail observed in item 103, right shoe cannot be excluded due to the basic design and structure. Again, the limited amount of detail made a very qualified findings. The other part, continuing on with this document and her final report, they all indicate that there could be no size comparison. And again, she tried the best she could, yes.
And going on down, 105.4, there was an unknown impression represented on the back of Maggie's leg.
Yes, sir.
I don't even know if he talked about it, but I'm going to 541.
Yes, sir.
What did she say about that? What were her findings?
I believe that she couldn't do anything with it.
Although there's a definite pattern visible, it cannot be definitively determined if the impression is a footwear impression or if it was created by some other object, right?
Correct.
And you agree with that?
Yes.
And the only thing she said it was kind of consistent with was the fabric portion of item 95 sandals that couldn't be excluded. And those are Maggie sandals, right? We don't know what it is, right?
Correct.
Sandals,
Could be that, could be anything.
could be a tire on an ATV.
Possible.
And let's keep going, we're almost through 105.5. And is that comparing the shoes with 557? Which has been offered.
What is 557?
It's right here.
Okay,
105.5, 105.6, you've looked at this.
the area behind the door, yes, sir.
You've looked at that. Overall, the item 105.5, unknown footwear, corresponds with the outsole design of item what right shoe?
Item 103.
Let's pause.
Again, these are class identifications. There is very limited detail.
And let's go to the final one here, 105.6. Unknown footwear impression, too partial to determine if it was made by the square diamond pattern of one of the item 21 shoes. Therefore, no conclusion could be rendered. Item 105.6, unknown footwear impression was not made by 95 and 103.
Yes, sir.
She examined every footwear, every one of these, correct? She being agent, compared them
Yes, sir, insofar as she could.
and came up with a report.
Again, I was not requested to write a report.
You don't even have a report.
Correct, sir. I've said that 3 times.
So you have no idea if everything else they didn't provide you was done 100% correctly?
No, sir.
Thank you, that's all.
Very, very briefly. Let me see if I can do this in less than 5 minutes. He asked you, yes, there's a photograph up here he asked you about in the sand with impressions, shoe impressions, right?
Yes, sir.
So if this Laura Rutten person that saw this earlier said, all she saw were sandals when she got to the crime scene, and then there were impressions over those sandals, would that indicate that somebody in some way spoiled or affected the crime scene that arrived after the police did, or with the police, or were the police?
After the observation, yes.
Is that something encouraged in these policies and procedures, to actually walk over footprints in the crime scene?
The primary redress at any scene is to protect the evidence, whatever it might be.
Was that protected?
I don't know.
It would appear if one officer saw just sandal impressions, and then after that, there were footprints on it, it's not protected.
Objection to leading.
Can't lead the witness.
We'll move on. So you were asked if Agent Worley did all she could do, and you said she tried.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, she tried with, she even says that the impressions, the pictures of the impressions are inadequate, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's because they didn't follow the simple procedures you've been doing for the last and most police departments have done for the last 2 or 3 decades, right?
And has been taught for a number of years.
No tripod, no direct angle. And let me ask you this. I believe we asked this before, but if she had done what you did in that New York crime scene and sprayed a chemical.
Objection, Your Honor.
Question.
I haven't finished. So if she had sprayed the chemical we saw in the pictures that you had in your PowerPoint from New York, what, if any, difference could that have made?
If there was a blood-like
So then
substance
it would be
present,
your 3 cameras.
and more especially in and around
and,
the partial
you
prints that were
can,
visible, it could give you additional
and then you
detail
can go
and
from
further
there. So
enhance
if
the
we are,
pattern design and hopefully give
So we're
you
not live
individualizing
yet? I'm just letting
characteristics
you
for
know.
comparison at a later date.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
The
Sorry.
difficulty with this whole case is I
Sorry, I
can't
know,
tell you
yeah.
when those
Still
prints were
nothing,
put
Emily.
there.
Oh,
There.
yes, it's a little bit of
The
a
only
delay.
comment that you can make is sometime prior to the time the photographs were taken, the print was placed there.
Okay. And this
My name is
technology
James
using that
Christopher
spray is
Wilson,
decades old also?
Yes, sir, it is.
W-I-L-S-O-N. I go by Chris.
So you said she tried. Could she have tried harder? Could she have tried better? Could she have used the techniques that have been around for 20 or 30 years
Tell the,
to make
jury just a
sure
little bit about
there
yourself,
wasn't the
where you grew
perpetrator's
up,
bloody
went to school, and
footprint
what you do.
in the feed room? Could
Well,
she
as
have
I
done
said a
that?
moment ago, my name is Chris Wilson. I
She
grew up
or
in
someone
Bamberg,
with their
about
investigative group
35,
that would
40
be
minutes
qualified
west
to
of
do
here.
that.
Graduated school there, went to school up in Spartanburg for college.
And
Came back to
he asked
Columbia
her a
to go to
series of
law
questions
school
going on
at
for 10 minutes
USC.
about, she compared this.
Finished law.
That shoe could have made that impression.
That shoe or any other pattern similar to that could have made it.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Metters.
Do a second PowerPoint that said that mark on Maggie was consistent with the shoe. Did you do another PowerPoint?
I've done several.
You've done several?
Yes, sir.
Where's the other one?
Chose not to use them.
They chose not to use them. That's all.
You may step down. We'll take a little break. If you go to the jury room, please do not discuss the case.
Your Honor, I failed to put the PowerPoint exhibit number 145 into evidence. Mr. Metters graciously has agreed to allow me to put it in at this point. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No objection.
Offered into 145 into.
Submitted without objection.
Do I have to buy you dinner now? Excuse me.
Ready for the jury? Bring them in.
Jury is present, sir.
Thank you. Your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Defense calls Barbara Ann Mixson.
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Take a seat in the witness stand. You can adjust the mic if you need to. State your name again for the record, please, ma'am.
Barbara Ann Mixson.
And spell your last name.
Mixson.
You have a seat, please. Can we pull that mic close to you? Ms. Mixson, will you tell the jury a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how old are you, and what do you do?
My name is Barbara Mixson, and I'm from Farmville, South Carolina, and I'm a widow. I have 4 daughters, 5 grands, 2 great grands, and I do housekeeping and care for Miss Elizabeth Murdaugh, and I'm 71 years old.
71 years old. How long have you been doing housekeeping for Ms. Libby Murdaugh?
42 years.
42 years. And you did housekeeping for Mr. Randolph Murdaugh when he was alive, I take it?
Yes, sir.
And do you know all the Murdaugh children, Randy and Lynn and John Marvin and Ella?
Know them just as good as I know my kids. They are my kids also.
They're part of your family.
That's right.
Are you part of their family?
Yes, sir.
How well do you know Alex sitting here in the courtroom?
Just like I know one of my kids.
And you love him like one of yours?
I sure do.
Okay. Did you know Maggie?
I know her real well. She was like a daughter and a friend.
You talk to her frequently?
Every day.
And did you know Paul?
I sure did.
how often would you see Paul?
I would see Paul practically every week. He would come down to see M and Hanson, and then I would be there during the day. And some days he'll come by my house and see me.
Right. And you know Buster,
I sure do.
and he's sitting in the courtroom today.
Yes,
Got a
sir.
chance to see him.
Yes, sir.
Just not going to take a whole lot of time, Ms. Mixson, but we just give the jury a little bit of a understanding of how frequently Alec would go by and check on his mom and dad over, say, the last 10 years.
Practically every day when I'm there. I see them every day, and I'm there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sometime I have to work on Saturday and Sunday, and he would come by.
And what time of day, I guess, the hours that you worked over at, did you call the place Almeida, or do you call it Almeida?
Yes, sir.
And what are your normal hours there at Almeida?
8 to 3.
And it's always been 8 to 3 for?
8 to 3, always.
And you took some time off when your husband was sick, and then you went back to work. You know when you went back to work?
My husband passed on January the 2nd of 2019, and I went back to work in August of 2019.
And during that period of time, you were working 8 to 3?
8 to 3.
Okay. And I think you said Alec would come by frequently to check on his mom and dad?
Yes, sir.
Would Maggie come with him?
Well, not through the week. I mostly see Maggie like on Fridays, or she might stop by like that. But it will come through the week by itself.
Okay. And I think you mentioned Paul would visit?
Yes, sir.
Just want to go to June 7th. You remember that awful day, Ms. Mixson?
Yes, sir.
Did you talk to Maggie that day?
I talked to her on June. I talked to her on June the 9th. I think it was between 7 and maybe 7:30.
June the 7th is when she was murdered.
That's right, June 7th.
And you talked to her that evening?
Yes, sir.
And you remember what y'all talked about?
Yes, sir.
What'd you talk about?
She said, Barbara, I was trying to reach you before I left to go to Somerville. I had to take my mama to the doctor, and I couldn't get a hold of you. But I am going to fix supper for the Murdaughs and for your family for Wednesday night. Because Thursday, I got to go take my daddy to the doctor. And she said, oh, Barbara, I'm going to call you back. She said, no, hold on a minute. That either Elliot or Buster calling me. She said, I tell you what, I'll call you back when I unload the car. And I never got the call back.
The last time you talked to her?
Yes, sir.
And the last conversation you had with her, she was planning to make you dinner. Is that right?
Dinner for me and her in-laws.
What was happening on June the 7th? Do you remember Mr. Randolph, what his situation was?
Well, John Marvin came to take Mr. Randolph to the doctor. And, I remember that part because he was real sick.
And after John Marvin took Mr. Randolph to the doctor, you remember that Mr. Randolph got checked into the hospital that day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember calling Alec?
Yes, sir.
On the afternoon of June 7th?
Yes, sir.
And what did you talk about?
Objection, hearsay.
What did you talk about?
Objection overruled.
What did you talk about, Ms.
Oh, I
Mixson?
called Elliot. Well, first I called Chrissy. I always call Chrissy first. I couldn't get Chrissy. So then I said, well, let me call Elliot. So I called Elliot. I said, Elliot, your mom is very agitated. She is crying. I give her medicine, and I want you to come check on her later on during the day. And he said, okay, I will.
What was Ms. Libby agitated?
Because Mr. Randolph had done gone to the hospital.
But and she was in fact agitated, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And what do you mean by agitated?
Well, she was crying a lot, and I couldn't get her to eat, and she just, she just agitated. She wasn't.
And I'm going to show exhibit that's in evidence. Doug, if you could pull up the State's Exhibit 520 and go to page 21, which is the Rudolph extraction long version. Ms. Mixson, can you see there's an entry on this timeline at 3:58:39? Alec Murdaugh receives an incoming call from Barbara Mixson. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
You think that's when you called Alec?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that is on June the 7th, for the record. All right, you can take that down, Doug. How'd you learn about Maggie and Paul?
Well, I was sitting on my porch, and my daughter, which she's in the courtroom, Shirley, Officer Stacy Lord came and pulled up. Shirley, my daughter, was in the courtroom. She jumped out of her car and told me to say, Elliot found Maggie and Paul dead.
So a police officer came to your house.
Two of them. It was Stacy Lord and then another one. And I said, could I go out there? And they said, no, you couldn't go out there.
And Ms. Mixson, that was a Monday night, and do you remember Mr. Randolph dying on a Thursday, passing on a Thursday?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that was June the 10th.
Yes, sir.
And do you remember that the funeral for Maggie and Paul was that Saturday? Do you remember the funeral service at the graveyard for Maggie and Paul on that Saturday?
Yes, sir.
And then Mr. Randolph's funeral was on that Sunday. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And the next day was a Monday. Did you work that day?
Yes, sir.
And what time did you come to work?
8 o'clock. Well, about 5 minutes to 8.
And who did you relieve?
Shirley Smith.
Okay, so Shelley would have worked the night shift, and you came on at 5 till 8?
Yes, sir, and released her.
And did you work that Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
And what time did you get to work?
5 minutes to 8.
And were you relieving Ms. Shelley Smith?
Yes, sir.
What about that Wednesday?
I released Shirley Smith 5 minutes to 8.
All right. And Ms. Mixson, on any of those days, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, when you relieved Ms. Shelley Smith, did you see a tarp opened up anywhere in Ms. Libby's house?
No, sir.
No blue tarp? You see no blue tarp on a rocking chair?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen a blue tarp laid out in the house?
I never seen a blue tarp laid out in the house. Never.
And you relieved Ms. Shelley
Yes,
every
sir.
day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have here.
By the state.
Very briefly. Captain Ms. Mixson. How you doing?
I'm doing good. And you, sir?
Been better, been worse? We met a few weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
You remember down at the,
Yes, sir.
not far from here.
Yes, sir.
You love Alex.
I love all of them.
You love
They
them.
like my children.
They like your family.
Yes, sir.
And we talked about that day before, briefly. You remember that day, the 7th, like he just asked you, we talked about what you did that day and who you talked to, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you didn't tell us about that conversation you had with Alex that day, did you?
No, sir.
Wait, have they talked to you about that recently? When's the first time you told anybody about that?
I can't remember, but I can't remember. It's been a little while. I can't remember.
That's all, thank you.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Your Honor, may this witness be excused?
Yes,
Thank you.
every witness 2 steps down is excused. Next witness.
Your Honor, this defense calls Micah Sturgis.
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give the court shall be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Take a seat in the witness stand. You can adjust the microphone when you seat if you need to. State your name again for the record, please, sir. Spell your last name.
Micah Sturgis, last name Sturgis.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sturgis.
Good afternoon.
To start with, can you just tell us about yourself? Where are you from?
Sure. My name is Micah Sturgis. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I am the Director of Digital Forensics for Barefoot Professional Investigations.
Pull the mic a little closer.
Sorry. Better? Yeah. I'm the Director of Digital Forensics for Barefoot Investigations.
Okay. And tell us about your experience in law enforcement and then cell phone forensics.
Sure. So from 2004 until 2016, I was employed by the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office. It's a full-service sheriff's office located in Cleveland County, North Carolina. They're on the border of North and South Carolina. During that time period from 2004 to 2006, I was a patrol deputy. In 2006, I was promoted to a corporal or training officer, where I trained new hires. In 2009, I was promoted to detective. In that capacity, I handled everything from larcenies to murders. And then I took on the role of the digital forensic examiner for the sheriff's office. Was the first one that we had, and I formed the digital forensics lab at the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office.
And before we get more into digital forensics, you've been involved in murder investigations before?
I have, yes.
Okay. As a lead detective?
As a lead detective, yes.
And then as you go into digital forensics, tell us about your experience with digital forensics in law enforcement, and then afterwards, and then after that, we'll get to your certifications and training.
Sure. As the digital forensic examiner for the sheriff's office, it was my responsibility to handle all the digital evidence that came into the lab, and I was also in charge of ordering things that needed to be ordered and stocked up on for digital forensic purposes. And during that time period, I was sponsored by the United States Secret Service to attend the National Computer Forensics Institute in Hoover, Alabama, where I was trained in mobile device examination, multiple tools, Celebrite, Blackthorn, which is a form of Burla, Ivy, XRY, which is another forensic tool. Paraben was another tool that we used. And so I received that training from the NCFI. They also sent me back with several things, one of which being a laptop computer or a MacBook in order to do examinations on, and also a Ramsey's box or a Faraday box that I used to use whenever we had phones that came in.
And let's just, since we're kind of on it, could you go through the training you've had in digital evidence?
Sure. So I have had the basic and intermediate cell phone forensic courses, introduction, intermediate, advanced, computer forensics, internet investigations, introduction to wireless investigations. I was a Lantern certified examiner, attended the Lantern cell phone training. Lantern is a forensics tool for Apple devices, primarily Apple devices, does some Androids. Apple iOS forensics, I attended that at the American Academy of Applied Forensics in Charlotte. Cyber investigations, I was nominated and sent to the National Computer Forensics Institute by the United States Secret Service, where I received my mobile device examiner certification. I also received Celebrite certifications while there at the NCFI, and Paraben mobile forensic training, Celebrite certified physical analyst, received XRY training at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and took the XRY intermediate courses. In 2017, I attended the Infuse conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I sat for my ENC written examination. Later came back to Charlotte and did the practical examination, where I was certified as an in-case certified examiner in 2017. And attended the Magnet User Summit a couple of times, received some training on their tool there at in one in Las Vegas, the other in Nashville. And received introduction to alternate data acquisition training, wireless analysis training. Received my Lantern Certified Examiner from Katana Forensics, my XRY Certified Examiner from MSAB, the Celebrate Mobile Forensics Fundamental Certification, the Celebrate Certified Operator Certification, Celebrate Physical Analyst Certification, and then the Celebrate Certified Mobile Examiner Certification, and also my in-case Certified Examiner Certification.
And can you tell us about how many extractions or acquisitions of digital evidence you've performed?
Sure. Well over 500 logical physical acquisitions and extractions using Lantern, the Apple device, forensic tool, Celebrate, Blackthorn, XRY, Paraben, and well over 750 images of hard disk drives or solid state drives of computers, and analyzing that data within either FTK or in-case. FTK's Forensics Toolkit. It's a forensic suite. Examining an in-case Magnet IEF, which is Internet Evidence Finder. That's what they started out as. They're now Magnet Axiom is the product that they produce and put out. So I've used Axiom to do multiple examinations with that. Image with hardware forensic imagers like the Forensic Falcon. I've used Paladin to get live acquisitions, Macquisition for Macs, and Recon ITR for MacBooks. Also had to collect checkpoint encrypted devices with my time at the bank.
And that leads into, when did you leave law enforcement and what have you done since you left?
Sure. In 2016, I received a phone call from an individual who owned a private firm in Charlotte, and I went to work for him as a digital forensic examiner in the South Park area of Charlotte.
Okay. And after?
After that, I worked for him from 2016 until roughly 2019, and then I went to Wells Fargo, where I was one of 24 examiners for the Wells Fargo and Company. After leaving Wells Fargo in 2021, I went and formed this lab at Barefoot Professional Investigations.
And have you ever been qualified as an expert by court to testify before?
Yes, I have in both criminal and defense work.
Okay. Criminal work, civil cases?
And civil as well, yes.
And in the criminal cases, have you been on the defense side, the prosecution side, both sides?
I've been on both.
Have you ever been qualified as an expert in digital forensics in a murder case before?
I have, yes, in 2015.
And was that for the prosecution?
It was for the prosecution.
Your Honor, at this time, I would offer the witness as an expert in cell phone forensics.
No objection, Mr. Sturgis.
He's so qualified.
Mr. Sturgis, before we get into the what we're here to talk about, are you paid by the defense to be here?
I am.
And how much?
My rate is $300 an hour for any type of examination work or consultation, and then $600 an hour to be on the stand.
And does that go to the company that employs you?
It does.
In your experience, are you aware of anyone who does this work for free for the defense?
No, I'm not. In fact, I do IDS work.
What's that?
IDS work is indigent service. So people who can't afford defense experts, and I do that work, and the state pays me.
Turning to this case, have you? What information have you reviewed regarding the cell phones in this case?
Everything that I've been able to look at and review has been provided by the state.
And specifically the extractions, where
Right,
they're from?
specifically the extractions of the mobile devices and reports that they've produced.
So you haven't done anything independent of what the state has provided?
No, only the state's data.
Okay. And have you had a chance to review the timeline that's been introduced into evidence in this case? I believe it was, I don't have the exhibit number on me, but the large timeline of events was
The one provided by the state, yes.
And as far as the cell phone information goes, Is that timeline accurate?
It is there, with the exception of a couple of things based off interpretation of the data. But for the most part, yes, it is accurate.
Is anything missing?
There are two instances where there's some things from the Knowledge C database that aren't in the report that I've been able to locate and identify.
Okay, and we'll later on get to that, but we won't have to belabor it because we'll just sort of be filling in those gaps. But there are 3 phones here, Paul, Alec, Maggie, Murdaugh. What did you do with Paul's phone, if anything?
With Paul's phone, the extraction reports that I received, there wasn't much data after 8:49, somewhere in that time on 6/7. So I didn't really focus much on that one. With Alex's phone, that one reviewed the steps that were there in the Apple Health sections. And with Maggie, I really focused my attention on Maggie's.
Okay. And so we'll focus on her phone. Was there any GPS data on her phone?
There was GPS data, but there was nothing from 6/7.
And remember when the GPS data started?
It was 6/9.
Okay. And you mentioned when talking about, I think, your qualifications, Faraday bags or boxes. What are those?
So a Faraday bag or a Faraday shield is something that completely takes the device off the network. It also prevents GPS signal from reaching the device and changing data to the device.
You could describe your experience working with those in law enforcement?
Sure. So part of my responsibility as when I worked at the sheriff's office as head of the digital forensics lab was to make purchases. So I would purchase these Faraday bags for our patrol officers. So when they came out on scene and came across, if we had an instance of a crime where a phone was used and they needed to seize that phone, they had access to those bags, either in their cars or back at the office in the shared vault room where they could go in and put their evidence up. And if it's a good bag, which, if you buy the right bag and the phone's put in there the proper way, then it prevents signal from reaching the phone.
And then did you mention a box?
Yes. So it was a Ramsey's box is what I called it. The Secret Service provided that to me when I left their training. And with that box, what I would do is I'd take the phone from the Faraday or from evidence that was in the Faraday bag wrapped up, put it inside the Faraday box or the Ramsey's box. It has 2 gloves that I'd shove my hands into. My computer and the forensic software would be plugged into the side of the Ramsey's box. It was a powered box. There was a light on the inside, so it had a window I could look into, and then I could manipulate the bag and open it up and pull the phone out and keep everything in that Faraday shield.
In your opinion, if Maggie Murdaugh's phone had been secured in the way you just described, would it have GPS data from 6/7?
It likely would have.
Can we show what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 278? Can we show what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 278, please? And can we see the top of the screen? So do you know what the little arrow in the top left of the phone screen is?
That's the locations. I'm sorry. That's a location services arrow.
And I probably should have asked first, this was admitted as a photo of Maggie Murdaugh's phone in the lab before the extraction. Have you seen this before? Do you recognize it?
Yes, I have.
And again, that arrow indicates.
Yes, that location services are active on the device, even though the phone's in airplane mode.
Does that mean that right there in the lab, it's writing GPS data?
Yes.
You can take that down. I'll show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 156. I'll ask you if you recognize that.
I do. This is Alex Murdaugh's steps and Maggie Murdaugh's steps from the Apple Health data.
Your Honor, I would offer, I believe without objection, Defendant's Exhibit 156 in evidence.
No objection. Submitted.
Pull up, it's the Apple. I'm going to just ask you to explain what some of these terms are. How does, and obviously from the title, this is out in Murdaugh's phone. How does the phone come up with that steps number?
So there are accelerometers.
Mic a
I'm
little
sorry.
closer, please.
I hope I sit up a little further. There's accelerometers inside the device. So whenever the phone is jostled or moved and there's the accelerometers move, then that accelerometer data logs a step. So independent upon where the device is on, if it's on your waist or in your pocket or you're holding it in your hand when you're walking, that movement of the accelerometer indicates those steps.
And what does, how does it come up with the distance that corresponds with those steps?
It uses the satellite's GPS.
And what does the start and stop times, what do they mean?
So in the Apple Steps or Apple Health data here, you see, for instance, entry 26, that the between the times of 7:55:32 and 8:05:07, that 270 steps were taken during that time period.
Okay. Now, do we know when in that time period the steps occurred?
We know that the steps or the logging of those steps started at 7:55 and 32 seconds, but whether we don't know each individual step, when each individual step took place. We just know that sometime during that time frame, those 270 steps were taken.
And between the steps numbers and the distance, do you have an opinion on which one is maybe more accurate?
In my opinion, the steps are going to be more accurate.
Why is that?
Because of the accelerometer and the hardware in the phone, they're more accurate.
Does that mean that the distance is not useful information?
It doesn't mean the distance isn't useful information. I think the totality of everything altogether is what we have to look at here.
The second page. And is this the same thing for Maggie Murdaugh's phone?
It is.
Before we get into time, just some other things to cover. There's been a lot of talk so far about orientation changes. You can take that down, that exhibit. What is an orientation change on an iPhone?
So an iPhone has two orientations. It has a portrait or up and down, or a landscape, which is horizontal or sideways. And whenever whenever the device is backlit, that's when the orientation change will log and show. Now, we're not specifically talking about like a phone. If you physically take the phone and you turn it like this, we're not talking about the physical.
I'm going to just interrupt a second. I know they don't let you have a phone, but since you're gesturing,
thank you.
There's a phone that might.
So what we're talking about is not the physical positioning of the phone, but the orientation of the data that you're reading on the device, that orientation change.
And what do the start and end times mean for an orientation change?
So when a orientation change is made, a start time is logged. That's the start time of the orientation change that you're seeing on the device itself.
And for Maggie's phone, what was the last orientation change? When was that?
I believe that was 9:06 and 12 seconds p.m. on 6/7.
And when did that one end or complete?
I believe that was 9:06 and 20 seconds.
And at when it completed, what was the orientation of the phone for the rest of the time?
It was in portrait mode.
Okay. If the screen is off, can an orientation change occur?
If the screen is off, no, the orientation change can't occur.
If the orientation change happens in the database at the exact moment the screen comes on, does that tell you anything?
When I see that, when I see a orientation change at the exact time that the screen is lit up, if the device was in horizontal or landscape mode and then moved into portrait mode and the screen comes on, then all of a sudden the exact same time, it changes into portrait mode. To me, that indicates that the phone was in a portrait mode position, and then the screen comes on, and then the orientation change takes place inside the phone.
Does that mean that movement when the screen is off can appear as an orientation change when the screen comes on?
When the screen comes on, yes. When the screen's backlit, that's when the orientation change. It cannot make an orientation change unless the back screen's lit.
So kind of moving on then to, we've talked about orientation changes and they don't happen when the screen is off, as you said. Can motion of the phone turn on the screen?
Yes. Very little motion can turn on a screen.
And what is the raise to wake feature on that?
So the Apple has a raise to wake feature that's set by default. Currently, this phone, and unfortunately you can't see there.
Well, could you, if the court's permission, could you come down to show the jury?
See that small movement. Can I put it right here? No? Okay. The slight raising of the phone will indicate. So when the phone's here, if you raise the phone, it raises the weight. So if you raise the phone like that, if the phone's flipped over, you flip the phone back over, it wakes up. If you move the phone from this mode to here, the phone comes on. So that's the raise the wake function.
And was this feature turned on Maggie Murdaugh's phone on June 7th?
By all indications on the database, there were that it was there. Yes.
Are you familiar with the location of Maggie Murdaugh's phone when it was covered by law enforcement on 680?
I am.
And have you reviewed the recently received GPS data for Alex Murdaugh's Suburban when it was passing that location?
I did.
Okay. So do you know when the Suburban passed the location of the phone?
When it was leaving the house where the crimes took place, it was around 9:08. When it was passing the location where that phone was located. And then on the return trip back, it was 9:59, I believe 19 seconds.
Was Maggie Murdaugh's phone screen off during those times?
Yes.
Now you're just here as a cell phone expert, right?
That's correct.
So can you offer any expert opinion on how a phone would tumble or bounce or move when thrown from a car going 40 plus miles an hour, into the brush in the side of a country road?
No, there's just too many variables, and I'm not an expert on physics. So.
Can you tell us how much motion would be required for the screen to come on a phone?
Very little. Just reaching and picking this phone up like I just did there, the phone comes on. So there's very little.
And again, in the times that Alex Murdaugh's car was passing, the screen never came on.
That's correct. The database indicated it was off.
Turn to Maggie Murdaugh's phone.
Show you what's been marked distance in, that's 158. Do you recognize this?
I do.
And what is it?
This is a PowerPoint presentation printed off that you put together, but it's based off of the Knowledge Seed database data. That
And to be clear, I typed it into PowerPoint. Have you reviewed every slide in that presentation?
I have.
Have you verified the data on every slide?
I have.
And you've confirmed independently the data on every slide?
Yes.
No objection.
Your Honor, I would offer, it's been marked as defendants 158 into evidence. So I'm going to go through this. No, don't zoom the screen. So we're looking at just a very short period of time, right? Can you describe the time period we're looking at?
Yes, this is on June 7th, from 8:49 PM until 9:07 PM.
All right, so we're going to go through here and just see exactly what was happening with her phone on that time. So it's the next slide, please. What's happening here?
At 8:49, 26
You can pull the mic closer, please.
Sorry. At 8:49 and 26 seconds, that's the last text message that was read by Maggie. It was indicated read on the device.
Next.
At 8:49 and 28 seconds, the backlight goes off.
And what does that mean?
That means that
The screen?
the screen's dark. Yeah, sorry.
And next.
At 8:49 and 31 seconds, the phone locks and it remains locked until it's recovered by law enforcement the next day.
Next.
At 8:53 and 8 seconds, the backlight comes back on. The phone's illuminated.
And next.
And 8:53 and 12 seconds, orientation to portrait starts.
Next.
At 8:53 and 15 seconds, that's when the phone began logging the 59 steps.
Next.
And
it's on the screen. And
yep, sorry. And at 8:53 and 20 seconds, there's Siri usage. This was indicated in the Knowledge C database. And that can be done by squeezing the side button, holding on to it for a short period of time, and Siri activates at that point.
So this is a user interface, you know?
Yes,
somebody
so
squeezing the phone.
it actually shows up as Siri UI, so it's a Siri user interface.
Next.
At 8:53 and 24 seconds, the orientation to portrait completes.
Next.
At 8:53 and 28 seconds, the backlight goes off again, so the phone's dark.
Next.
At 8:53 and 32 seconds, the backlight comes back on the phone and illuminates.
Next.
At 8:53 and 44 seconds, the backlight goes off again.
Do you have any opinion about why it just popped on and off like that?
I mean, there were no indications in the Knowledge C database that any notifications came in or anything of that nature. The only thing I could think would be that the phone were jostled or lifted or somehow the light came on.
And next.
At 8:54 and 32 seconds, the backlight comes on.
Next.
At 8:54 and 34 seconds, there's an entry in the Knowledge C database about the camera usage. Camera starts. So in that, there are, in that database, and if you don't mind, I'll kind of expand on this. In that database, the Knowledge C database is comprised of tables and rows and columns. And in that database, on that specific item where the camera was, there is another column that is called the Z structured metadata. And so if I follow the camera under the value string there indicating that the camera was activated, if I follow that line all the way across to where that structured database is, structured metadata is in that table, I'll get a PK number, a primary key number. That number was 571. In the Knowledge C database, there's another table within the Knowledge C database called Z structured metadata. So if I go to that table, because I found that number under the Z structured metadata column, if I go to that specific table in the database and look for that primary key 571, and I scroll all the way out to the end, I'll see a description of what that 571 is. And in that case, here, it was com.apple.springboard.lockscreen.scroll, which would indicate that it was a camera function on the lock screen. And that when you press that button in the bottom right corner of the phone that has the little camera indication, it'll scroll over to a camera. Or you can swipe over from the left and then it indicates that there's a camera there.
So was this some sort of attempt by the phone on its own at Face ID?
It didn't indicate that it was a Face ID at all. It indicated that it was a camera.
And by indicated cameras, did it indicate that someone was, a person using the phone activated the camera?
Yes.
Okay. Next.
At 8:54 and 35 seconds, the camera use ends.
Okay. And keeping in mind the time stamp, go to the next slide.
And at 8:54 and 40 seconds, the orientation to landscape starts.
Okay. And so how long was that since the camera usage?
About 5 seconds since it ended.
Next slide.
And then at 8:54 and 44 seconds, the orientation to landscape ends.
And next.
At 8:55 and 4 seconds, the backlight turns off and the orientation to portrait starts.
Now, what's happening on this one? What's happening here?
Yep. So right here, the phone was previously in landscape mode, and it settled in at that landscape mode at 8:44 seconds. The backlight went off at 8:55 and 4 seconds. At that same time, the orientation of portrait starts, and this is indicative of what I was talking about earlier. When you rotate the phone while it's in the screen's not lit, and then the screen comes on and the orientation changes once the screen pops on. It'll flip over to wherever the camera or wherever the phone is turned to. At this time, orientation, the portrait ends at that time, and the orientation to the landscape starts at that time. So that's exactly what I was talking about. And then the phone stops logging those 59 steps at that time as well.
I'm going to kind of emphasize this. Could we go back 4 slides? All right. So when the camera use ends here, 8:54:35, going forward, on slide, we have an orientation change.
That's correct. To the landscape starts, yes. Orientation to the landscape ends at 44 seconds after.
And then the next slide. So now that the screen has gone off, how long has it been since the camera use?
Let me go back in my. So it's 8:55 and 04. Since the camera use ended at 8:54 and 35, and then the backlight goes off at 8:55 and 4 seconds. So, what is that, a minute?
Is that 29 seconds?
I mean, hang on, sorry. Yeah, it's 29. I apologize. My math was terrible, wasn't it? Yes.
And then going forward, so what we had in that 29 seconds was an orientation change, and then the screen goes off.
Right, that's correct. Where are we going with it now? Just flipped the slide on me.
All right, so let's go back to the slide that's timestamped 8:55:32. This is where we left off.
That's where we left off, yes. So here, the backlight's on, the orientation of portrait ends, and then the orientation to landscape starts immediately when the backlight comes back up on the phone. And then the phone stops logging those 59 steps at that time as well.
And the next slide, 4 seconds later.
4 seconds later, the backlight's back off again.
Okay. Now we'll go kind of quickly here. The next slide comes on.
9:03, the backlight's on. At 9:04 and 23, we have a missed call from Alex that starts. At 9:04 and 23, the backlight goes off.
But now let's go back to the previous slide.
One more.
The backlight went off at the exact same time that a call came in from Alex Murdaugh.
That's correct, yes.
And now the next slide.
And then we have a missed call from Alex that ends.
That's the
at
call
9.
we just saw, right, ending.
Yes.
Do you have an opinion on why the screen light would go off pretty much right when a call comes in?
The only thing that I could figure is when the phone came in, or excuse me, the call came in, that the person hit the side button turn it off and then put it down or flip the phone over.
Do you
And the
know of
backlight
anything on
goes
the
off.
phone that would cause the screen to go off right when a call comes in and stay off during the call that does not involve human interaction with the phone?
No, I don't.
I'll go to the next slide.
9:05 and 44 seconds, the backlight comes back on. And at 9:06 and 12 seconds, orientation change to portrait begins.
Okay. And the next one, and we'll stop on that.
At 9:06 and 14 seconds, there's an incoming call from Alex that starts at that time.
And then the next one,
And then the incoming call from Alex ends at 9:06 and 18 seconds.
and the next slide.
And then we have an orientation change to portrait ends at 9:06 and 20
And
seconds.
stopping here, that call we just saw coming in from Alec, that was sandwiched within this orientation change.
That's correct, yes. It was in between them.
And next slide.
9:06:52, we have another incoming call from Alex that starts.
The next one.
And then it ends, the incoming call from Alex ends at 9:06 and 59 seconds.
Now the last slide.
At 9:07, the backlight goes off and it remains off until 9:31 and 44 seconds.
And do you know from your review of the GM GPS data where the Alec Murdaugh Suburban was at 9:07?
Yes, at 9:07.
We should have sound. Do we have sound? We were switching over streams. Y'all have told me that they're just restating the state's evidence. I'm not surprised that a tech expert, and I've been looking at this, I'm not surprised that the tech expert is trying to recontextualize the data because each person gets to recontextualize the data. Oh, I've had multiple Elaine your mic moments today. Multiple. So, a huge thank you to Rob. It sounds like Rob was entertaining the chat. Look, I know that Rob is trying to do work in the background.
No further questions.
No further questions. I know I missed a few witnesses. I'll catch up on those after stream tonight. Anything helpful for y'all? Let me put up a poll. Has anything this afternoon been helpful?
Good afternoon, Mr. Conrad.
Yes, no, kinda.
I believe at the beginning of your testimony, you testified that.
Oh, I missed the judge
you
admonishing
felt
them for
likely
walking
there was
around.
some
Damn it.
Location data stored on Maggie's phone from June 7th.
No, it's
that
okay.
Potentially was overridden.
Rob, thank
Did
you.
I
You're good.
understand that correctly?
I said that there was data that was on the phone from June 8th and that correction,
Helpful to
June
y'all.
9th, and that data likely could have been on there had it been preserved.
Things are clearer. That's good.
And explain to the jury just real quick, how does an iPhone store that GPS information? In generic terms, and then if I need to get more specific, I will.
Sure, it's.
I'll have
so
to go
the
look at some
iPhone-
spicy things.
The iPhone keeps that data and it uses the GPS location, the GPS satellite, triangulates with the GPS satellites and stores that data.
All right, I'll go look for that moment.
And does it store it in a sort of cache?
We definitely had some hot mics as I was
And,
getting ready for my
when it
Zoom. I
comes
don't know
to
what
iOS,
happened.
As opposed to, say, a standard hard drive, iOS keeps certain databases caches fairly limited, correct? And it
That's
doesn't
correct.
Let me gain
allow
this
them
audio
to
up a little.
access the entire memory available on a device at any given point, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Is that better?
And do you know, or at least in your training or your investigation, have you been able to determine
You know,
just
let me
how big
switch
a
to see if we
typical
can do a
cache is,
three
at
feed,
least,
three stream
would have been
feed
for Maggie's phone during this
from,
time?
you know,
I
the
didn't research that.
sometimes
No, I didn't
cranky,
research that.
He's sometimes cranky.
Didn't research that, no.
Okay, so you don't know how long Maggie's phone would have potentially stored GPS information at this during 2021, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
No.
There we go.
All right. And just so I understand correctly, you agree that a iPhone will not record an orientation change if the screen is off, correct?
That's correct, yes.
That seems that everybody agrees on that. Thank you, chat, for helping me figure out what happened when I was back. Back
I believe
again.
Mr. Barber handed you his phone to kind of demonstrate this lift to weight thing, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And do you know what model iPhone Mr. Barber has? Did you look at it?
Don't know exactly which iPhone he has.
Okay. And do you know what
I'll go find that.
version of iOS is on Mr. Barber's phone?
I do not know.
And Apple updates its iOS fairly frequently, correct?
They do, yes.
Do you know, at least, we don't know what's on Mr. Barber's phone, but do you know what the current release version is today?
It's 16 point something.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and look.
Do you know your review of Maggie's phone, what version?
They'll
was
probably
on
ask,
Maggie's
though.
phone on June 7th?
Am I going to go back and
believe
read
that
super
was,
chats? Yes.
14 points.
I will pull the ball up.
I think it was 14.6, if I'm not mistaken. It was somewhere in the 14 range.
And are you aware that in some of these
I don't
iOS updates, some of these sensitivities and some of these settings can change, correct?
Depending on bug fixes and things, yes.
And are you aware of a change that occurred in iOS
chat.
15?
Y'all are like, absence makes the heart go fonder.
iPhones
Thanks.
record orientation changes, or when they record orientation changes?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
The way these attorneys walk around the courtroom like they haven't a care in the world stresses me out.
Okay. Can we go back to I forget, let's see, the PowerPoint? What exhibit was that? I believe it was it 155? Was there two? I just was aware of one.
I will definitely go back
For this witness.
and look at but Judge, they pointed a gun at me. I will absolutely go back and look at that. They've started speaking over objections. I'm sorry that I switched. Question, where did the tech guy say the Suburban was at 906? I'm sorry that I switched feeds when that happened. Or when the audio cut out. I don't know. But I will go back and find it. And I imagine it'll come up on cross. So I'll go find it if it doesn't come up on cross.
And this doesn't have slide number, so bear with me. But first of all, before we talk about Maggie real quick, you did review Paul's phone to a certain degree, correct?
To a certain extent, yes.
All right. And do you recall from your review of Paul's phone when the last time his phone was unlocked on June 7th of 2021?
I don't recall, no, I'm sorry.
And we can find the state's exhibit if we need to, but would you disagree if I told you it was 8:49 p.m. or shortly thereafter?
If
8:49 p.m.?
if that's what's in the state's exhibit, I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
You missed the bribe. Did y'all bribe me to come back?
One of your first slides here is that Maggie's phone.
Who's bribing who? Am I being bribed? I can be bribed with
see, go to
snacks.
1, 2,
Obviously.
3 slides. One more. All right. Oh, back one. I'm sorry. 8:49:31.
Good.
And your review of Maggie's phone found that her phone was locked at 8:49:31. Correct?
That's correct, yes.
And it was not unlocked until when? The next day?
The next day, that's correct.
All right. And that's when it was recovered by law
By
enforcement?
law enforcement, yes, sir.
Okay. And did you review Alex's? You said you reviewed Alex's phone to a certain degree too. I think you said
Interesting
the steps,
slides.
The
right?
steps, yes.
And in your review, did you find any steps on his phone between 8:09 and 9:02 p.m.?
Is that consistent with the phone sitting down? I love the riveting slides.
8:09 and 9:02 p.m.
Correct.
Correct. No, I don't recall seeing that, them seeing the stuff in the knowledge C here.
Okay, all right. But Maggie's phone's locked at 8:49:31, and it does not unlock till the next
I will.
day,
I'll
correct?
find
That's
it.
correct, yes, sir.
Y'all don't worry about
Paul's
it.
locked for the last time around the same time, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And Paul's phone in your review to recall what time the battery died on his phone?
I don't recall, no, sir.
Would you dispute me if I said, and we can find the exhibit if we need to, his phone shut down at about 10:34 p.m.?
If that's what's in the report, I don't dispute it, no, sir.
And would you agree with me if I said that Paul's phone locking at 8:49 and remaining on until 10:34, first of all, that's about, what, hour and a half or so?
That's correct.
Metters looks like he
And
wants to
do you know
curl
his
up and take a
battery
nap
state
on
when
that
his phone locked at 8:49 p.m.?
bench
It was
back
in low
there.
power mode.
So
I've never
less
seen
than
this many
10%,
prosecutors on a
2%,
case
something like
ever.
that?
Yes, that's correct.
1, 2,
And would you
3,
agree with me
4,
when
5, 6, 7, 8,
the fact
9,
that his phone
10
remained on until
10
10:34
prosecutors?
indicative that it wasn't really
10?
handled much at all or used at all?
Yes.
And did you find any other evidence of any usage on Paul's phone after 8:49 that you can recall?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And when I say use, just so it's clear between us, I mean either answering a call, making a call, reading a text, sending a text,
Right.
orientation change.
And no user interaction with it.
All right.
Well, I know what I'll be
So
looking
let's-
for on
let's talk a
everybody's
little bit about
roundup today
orientation
are
change.
those moments that I
So,
missed.
Would
Yeah,
you
they
agree
definitely
that
seem to dislike each other.
the most likely reason for an orientation change is human interaction, meaning humans using the phone?
Yes.
Are there any other possible explanations when you see an orientation change, or any other explanations that you, in your opinion, that could explain an orientation change?
Only if a phone, was in one position, lit up, fell off, and landed in another position.
Okay.
But no,
And when you see a series of orientation changes, 30 seconds or a minute between each orientation change, it'd be difficult to explain that by a phone just kept falling on its own, correct?
repeat the question, I'm sorry.
If you see a series of 3 orientation changes, just speaking hypothetically for a moment, if you see a series of 3 orientation changes, say 30 seconds separate them or thereabouts, or a minute separate them, could you explain that? Would it be very likely that a series of falls caused those orientation changes?
It depends on how many falls it was making, but, being jostled around in a pocket and the light on, being turned, if it's in a person's hand and being turned back and forth, and that would be the only thing I could indicate with an orientation.
Is that how my
change.
dad butt dials
Okay.
me? Can you explain
All right,
that?
Can we pull that slideshow back up, please? Let's go forward one.
Nelia said, Emily, watching this without you is painful. I'm sorry. Don't leave us again. I learned that lesson early on in Depp v. Heard. I left to go to a conference for 2 days, and y'all were like, what are you doing? Don't leave us.
8:53:15.
Today was quite interesting.
There
Today
you
has
go.
been a mix of
And
interesting.
this is when Maggie's phone starts showing some steps, correct?
That's
quiet.
correct, yes.
And
Okay.
you would agree that the most likely explanation for this is the phone is moving in some manner, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Why are
And
they
those
slide by
accelerometers are reporting,
slide?
or the bounces are jostling, that would most likely be explained by steps, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, you can't tell us who's carrying that phone at this time, can you?
No.
All right, next slide. All right, and so at this 8:53:20, you say there's some Siri usage and a squeezing of the side button. And let's just, is that the only explanation of why you'd see the Siri pop up on a phone, is the squeezing the side button, or are there other possibilities?
There's another possibility of her saying, hey Siri, and then that
Okay.
happens because it's a Siri user interface.
Okay, so there could be another explanation, but it's most likely someone squeezing the side button.
Wait,
Could
do
be the
they-
side
Siri.
button saying, hey Siri.
Wait,
but it's
does
a
the
user interface.
wait. Does the phone show that the side button was squeezed? Because
All right.
Madame S word
go to next
activates
slide,
for all
please.
kinds of things. Or is this them saying that it's most likely that the side button was squeezed?
Actually, let's go
Barbara
to
made the PowerPoint. That
8:54:34,
tracks.
please.
It just shows that Siri was activated. Okay, so there's other things that could have
Maybe
happened.
One more. There we go. All right, and here you say the camera gets activated, correct?
That's
Think so.
correct.
And you think the most likely explanation is somebody swiped the camera symbol on a locked phone, correct?
Right, either swipe the camera or touch the bottom button because it's coming from the springboard lock screen.
Okay, we say bottom button. Which button?
If you're looking at an iPhone and well, my most recent iOS, I think it's 16 point something. In the bottom right corner, there's a button that you can touch and hold, and the camera comes on. But when that happens, it comes over from the left, and the camera scrolls over.
Okay. And then next slide. And then 8:54:35. This is 1 second later. The camera use ends. Correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
And so, in your opinion, based off the fact that that was used for a total of 1 second, do you think that was someone intending to actually use the camera and take a picture?
I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't think so. I mean, that's just a.
But the camera's only open for a second,
Right.
Let
They couldn't have
him
taken a picture in a
finish,
second.
counsel. Just for everyone, just let them finish. Save the court reporter, save us, save my poor patients.
8:55:32.
But this witness seems like he's just very methodical. I like his tie, though.
And we see the orientation change here at 8:55:32. Next slide. And the backlight goes off at 8:55:36, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
We go to the next slide. And the backlight's back on 9:03:52. So that's roughly, how long is that? 8 minutes? I don't know if I'm gonna make you do math, but.
Yeah, about that. Yes.
And so the screen's off for that 8 minutes, correct?
That's correct.
And so, would you agree with me, it does seem likely someone's handling that phone Maggie's phone between 8:53 and 8:55, correct?
Yes.
All right, we see orientation changes, we see the potential button being pushed. Someone's got that phone in their hand, correct?
That's correct.
You can't tell us who, correct?
No, I can't.
All right. And then, at 8:55:32, we see kind of an 8-minute gap in activity, correct? Between
Yes.
8:55 and 9:03, correct?
Yes.
Almost as if somebody put that phone down.
Yes, that's a possibility.
Whoever had it, correct?
Correct.
And you can't tell us where they put that phone down, right?
No, sir, I can't.
Could they put it in a vehicle,
That's very possible. I don't know.
a golf cart?
I don't know.
He's going to say it's possible. But the prosecution, possible's not your case. You need to prove where it was, kind of.
Okay, let's go to 9:04:23. Yep. All right. And we see this incoming call from Alex. You
Yes.
said the screen turns off almost immediately, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
In your opinion, you think somebody actually hit the button to turn that
I
shit
like
off,
the
correct?
effect of doing light on, light off with the light slide and then the darker slide. I appreciate the thought that goes into
The
this.
screen comes back on at 9:05:44.
I like
You
it.
can go to that slide. Correct?
Yes.
And then 9:06:12, we see an orientation change, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
But I don't know
And 2
why this
seconds
isn't
later,
just
we
a
see
list.
what? Next slide, please.
Like list, just be a list.
What is this? What is
That's
this
an
indicate?
incoming call from Alex.
Okay. 2 seconds after the orientation change starts, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Alex bond is like 7 million, I think. So that's why he is still in custody. He has not been able to post bond.
Okay. And then go to 9:07.
Yeah, clear is what we need.
Okay.
I just wonder if this
And the
cleared up the
screen goes off at
timeline
9:07,
helps
correct?
That's
both
correct.
sides.
And stays off for, what, roughly 23 minutes?
Yes.
And you just testified with Mr. Barber that Alex's car was sitting just outside his house, correct?
That's according to the documents that I reviewed. Yes.
And
Yeah, I do need a
and
timeline
I don't know if you
versus
have
a
this
flip.
information in front of you, but did you determine when
A flip through. Oh my God!
that
Stop
GPS
moving!
data shows
Stop moving!
his vehicle
He's just
start
like-
to move
It's frenetic.
Yes, it,
after 9:07?
after 9:07?
Well,
the-
first of all, is his vehicle stationary at 9:07?
No, it's in the driveway at 9:07, but it's it starts at the house at 9:06 and 52 seconds PM.
When do you start to see motion, or do you?
9:06 and 52 seconds is where I start to see the motion there.
Okay. And 8 seconds later is when Maggie's screen turns off
Yes,
for 23 minutes?
yes,
And you agree that a iPhone, at least with version 14.6, when the screen's off, it will not record an orientation change, correct?
that's correct.
And you agree with me that you don't know what version of iOS that Mr. Barber had on his phone that you just did that demonstration?
That's correct.
Did you conduct any tests with the phone with 14.6 to see what movement can cause it to, or what can cause that phone to screen to come on?
I don't have any 14.6 phones.
Okay. All right.
Beg the court's indulgence. We'll go to some questions. It's 5 o'clock in the East, so they should be done pretty soon. Jordan said the defense case is weak so far. The defense case is really just trying to poke holes in the prosecution's case. The defense, this can't be emphasized enough. The defense does not have to prove anything. Only the prosecution. This is not a self-defense case. There's nothing the defense has to prove. They have to poke holes. And so if people are already inclined to not to see the holes in the prosecution's case, then you've got the defense trying to poke at it. I don't know if what happened today moved the needle for the defense poking holes,
You were asked about,
or if the holes
iOS
are already
version
there because there's
15
holes in
and
the
a change
prosecution's
in
case.
orientation behavior. Is the raise to wake feature something distinct from orientation behavior?
No, the raised to wake is a separate from orientation behavior. Raised to wake's a separate
I'll go find it.
application within.
Is raised to wake the feature that causes the phone to come on with slight movement?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that the raised to wake feature that you've already testified was active on Maggie Murdaugh's phone works any different than any iPhone today?
I have no evidence to prove that, no.
Okay.
And again, you can refer to your notes. When Alec Murdaugh's SUV passed the location where Maggie Murdaugh's phone was recovered, the side of the road, was the screen off?
The screen was off, yes.
It was off as he approached it?
Yes.
And again, how much movement does it take to turn the screen on?
Very little movement.
And this is a separate issue from orientation changes?
That's correct.
But we're talking about, are we talking about movement activating the screen?
That's correct, yes.
Are we talking about the screen being sideways or up?
No, we're not talking about the orientation. We're talking about the actual raised awake function on the phone.
The camera usage, and in fact, no picture was taken that you're aware of.
Right, that's correct. I didn't see any photographs there.
Nobody did.
But is it your opinion, what is your opinion about whether someone deliberately activated that
I
camera?
mean, they could have. They could have been an accident. I don't know. I don't know what the person could have been doing.
The
but
expert
it was a user interaction
for
with
the
the device.
state said it looked.
And
it seemed like it could
there
be
was
somebody
talk
trying to
about phones
scan
falling to change
a
orientation.
face.
Can a phone change orientation without actually falling?
No, I mean, there has to be some type of movement for the phone from portrait to landscape.
Right, so
it
you
doesn't
don't have
have
to
to
drop
fall.
the phone?
No,
So
except it's sitting upright.
Also,
if it's sitting on its
I
side,
have
can
dropped my phone
flip
on
it
my
this way,
face
orientation
and not
changes.
changed
if
orientation. So
somebody's
my phone
running
has
with the
fallen
phone,
without
can it change
it.
orientation?
Yes. Those are user events that can cause that.
Can we pull up what's been previously admitted as Defense Exhibit 45? This is, as I just
That's
said
a whole lot of
previously,
conversation happening at the back
admitted,
bar of the prosecution
Do you
team.
recognize this as GPS data in a cache database?
This looks like a, yes, cache for the ZRT cell location database, yes.
And what's the timestamp for the first entry?
It's 6.
It does. It sucks.
9:21
Dropping your phone on your face sucks.
At 2:51.
Whatever program the defense is
PM.
using, I really like what they are able to show and the way that it pulls out.
In your opinion,
with
would
like
it be
the
fair
drop
to
shadow.
say that if this phone had
It's
been
awesome.
extracted or put in a Faraday bag a couple of days earlier, we would have GPS data from 6/7?
In my opinion, it's likely that we could.
It's likely that we could. If they had preserved it better, it's likely. Does it help?
The Apple Step Data exhibit. Okay, we previously talked about this, Alec Murdaugh's steps.
No one can say for sure.
Between entries 27 and 28, you see those time periods? Just want to remember that and go to the next page. Here we have Maggie's steps. Are there any steps, periods of steps that correspond between Maggie Murdaugh and Alec Murdaugh?
No, I don't see any.
So there's no period where both phones are stepping.
They
at
did
this-
some
the
of
same
that in
period?
their timeline witness.
And if we stay on this one, if we look at entries 5 and 6, the distance is almost identical, 31 meters.
Yes, it is.
Are the steps different?
The steps are different.
Is that a significant difference?
Not a significant difference for the 5 and 6, no.
So 59 versus 43, so is that 16, it took 16 more steps to go the same distance?
Yes.
So does that indicate shorter steps?
Shorter steps, yes.
Okay, just the final question is to, emphasize here. You can't tell us what a phone would do tossed out a window. That's not your expertise.
No, I can't.
But you can tell us how much motion it takes to turn on the screen.
Yes, very
Not
little
much.
motion.
And you've
Turn the screen
demonstrated
on.
that.
Several times, yes.
And if the screen is on, the orientation
That
change
feature of the iPhone was active on her phone,
will note.
Yes,
and it is totally separate from orientation behavior.
that's correct, it is.
Are we done?
No further.
Okay.
Anything further?
They might end for the day.
Just a couple things, Your Honor. You said you reviewed Paul's phone. Did you review the video that's been called the Kenneth video in this case?
Yes, I have seen
Outside the
that.
scope.
And did you have any information that would
Isn't that
lead you
outside
to
the scope
disagree
of
that video was
redirect?
recorded at 8:44, about 55 seconds on the night of June 7th?
No, I don't have anything.
And the location data, would you agree the location data for that video was recorded at the kennels on the Murdaugh property at Moselle?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Barber was talking to you about steps data. And just so it's clear to the jury, and I'm going to speak in hypotheticals here for a second, but if you see the iPhone record steps over an interval of about 5 minutes, for example, it records a certain number of steps over that 5 minutes. Does that mean, is that phone trying to tell you that someone's uniformly walking at an exact pace that keeps them moving over that entire 5 minutes?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. They could stop at some point in the middle of that, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And so they could stop and pick something up in the middle of a period showing steps, correct?
That's correct. It's just the steps between those two times.
So you can't testify, you can't tell us if between,
Here's the thing.
steps,
These prosecutors are all going to pull out their phones at the end of the trial and talk about
next
how many
slide.
steps they've taken. I think that's maybe why they're all moving around so
And
much.
looking at
There's got to
entry
be a
20 on
reason.
Alex's phone,
Entry what, I'm sorry? couldn't hear.
28.
28?
Yep.
He couldn't hear
And
when we
between
talking.
902 and
Apologies.
906, we see, what, 283 steps, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right, and you can't tell us if his phone stopped at any point between those,
No.
was
no,
that
it's just
roughly 4 minutes or a little over 4 minutes?
No, just 283 steps between those two times.
So he could have walked 200 of those steps in the first 2 minutes and then only walked, slowed down
They
for
have
the
a
rest
plan.
of the
They have a
correct?
plan.
Or it could have been vice versa.
Yes.
Or he could have stopped for an entire minute somewhere in there. You can't tell us any different, correct?
It'd be unlikely to stop for an entire minute. I think if you stop for that long a period of time, a new entry would be made, but.
Do you know, is there a cutoff for iOS
No,
that would?
I think that, just based off of what I'm seeing here, I mean, for instance, entry 29 and 30, you have about a 3-minute gap there. And
No, we've seen this prosecutor some.
So maybe if he stopped for a minute, it would have started a new entry? is
could
what you're
have.
saying?
It
All right. But
could
if he
have.
had stopped for a shorter period of time, he wouldn't necessarily have, correct?
right.
Okay.
Oh, no, I don't actually think they have a plan. I
And
just thought it would
finally,
be funny if they did.
Mr. Barber was asking about.
I'm not that
distance.
confident anymore.
And I think, I want to make sure I understood you correctly. I think you testified that you would consider the actual steps count to be more accurate than the distance. Is that
I
correct?
would, yes.
Have you found any research or studies that has measured or the accuracy of steps or distance in iOS devices?
I have, yeah, and for instance, I've had cases where the step count and the GPS data is different sometimes.
Okay. And in your opinion, the steps count is probably more the most accurate?
In my opinion, yeah, the steps count is more accurate.
Okay.
What about in Pokemon Go?
You may step down.
I think we're at the end of day 22, folks. He said steps were more
Ladies and
accurate
gentlemen, that is it
than
for
GPS.
today. We resume at 9:30 tomorrow. Please do not discuss the case.
So I wonder if the judge will say anything to the attorneys as the jury leaves this courtroom. Let's see. I'm going to switch real quick. We'll see if the judge has anything else to say to these attorneys and comes back. Yeah, it looks like the judge is sitting back down. So I think the audio should come back on now that the jury has left. This judge doesn't look like he's going anywhere.
Anything further on this day?
Stay, Your Honor.
Nothing with the defense, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll resume at 9:30 tomorrow.
Anything further on this day? We'll resume at 9:30 tomorrow. Thank you, Your Honor. Time for a stretch break. It's been a busy day. I've done a lot of talking today. We had to take an hour break. I feel like I missed only a little bit of spice. I'm going to go find it. The mods have already done the things and clipped it out. As everybody's leaving court, here, we'll just put this up first. As everybody's leaving court, you see kind of the family members all smiling at Alec. Buster it looked like was trying to say something to him, which is okay. Again, as he walks out, he's allowed to be like, goodbye or whatever. I'm going to do some questions. Then we've got to premiere the podcast. Some of you have already listened to the audio version because I've seen it do very well today. So then we're going to premiere the podcast with the chat. I will be in the chat a bit as I'm getting things rounded up for the day. So we will be there. And that's about it for today. But I do like watching people get on up and get out of court. So we're going to watch that happening too. All right. So with that, I heard I missed a thing. We're going to go do that. Todd said, loved your BHBA chat. Was nice to take a break from this. Thank you. I had some tech issues at the beginning, had a hot mic in here as we were trying to figure it out. And then the Beverly Hills Bar Association, I don't know what they're all looking at, but then the Beverly Hills Bar Association had to restart a live stream. So then the link that I used to share with y'all ended up not being the link of the stream. And I was like, what is happening? It looks like Poop Badoo wants to talk to John Marvin. All right. Well, bring the dancing lobsters. It really, or the dancing sharks, like left shark, right shark. I hear my teen. He didn't come in and say hi today. He probably heard me talking so much that he didn't. But I've got a clip for what I missed, and we're gonna play that. I like looking at what's happening in court as we start to answer some questions. So today was a thing, but I was trying to make sure that I could do both on this computer, be on the Zoom call, and still maintain this stream. Don't worry, we will keep things going as we move forward. And it's the only interruption I should have till the end of the case. The end of the case being, middle of next week, probably. The defense says they'll be done by Friday. No, don't go to the clock. Let's watch the attorneys talk. Oh, the slow pan to the clock. Darn it. And that's the end of this day, as the judge says. So I'm going to go to that link and we'll take a look. Let's see. Housekeeper gave evidence this afternoon. Just checked Alec's telephone interview about the roadside incident where he says she got him drugs and no one asked her about it. I'm going to have to go look at that as well. But again, that's what they will do. Emily, your soundboard needs circus music. It kind of does. I mean, we got that. That's about it. That we don't use enough. Hello, you're home. Good to see you. I'm streaming. How are you? Glad you're home. Are you saying hi to the law nerds? Sort of. Cheez-Its? Delish. I'm good. Thank you, though, for offering. I appreciate it. I might text you if I need you to just make sure your brother is off the bus. Thank you. All righty. I know we need something. We need something. What we need right now is to go take a look at the clip of the attorneys, because I have not seen that yet. So this, oh, the mods clipped it down for us. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's from our stream. Mods, thanks. Look, this is an actual We Are Professionals moment. Look at us. Jordan, you rock. Thank you. All right. Let's see what I missed. All right, let's see what I missed.
I read the next line.
Yeah, but that's item 21 and 95.
Correct.
You were trying to imply that.
No, I wouldn't do that.
You made a mistake?
No.
Let me turn this up just a little bit. Hold on. You made a mistake? Look at him. He's like, everybody's got erasers on their pencils, and now I'm going to ask if you made a mistake or didn't make a mistake. Let me gain this up just a little bit and go from there. All right. Let's see.
Well, you said they
The
were
last-
doing that. They were-
Standing up, badgering this witness next to him. He can read it. He can comment from back here. He's in.
Oh my goodness.
He can read it. He
Oh,
can
I gotta
comment,
back it up. I gotta back it up to the beginning of poop. My brain just started processing.
badgering this witness.
imply that.
No, I wouldn't do that.
You made a mistake?
No.
Well, you said they
The
were
last-
doing that. They were-
Standing up, badgering this witness next to him. He can read it. He can comment from back here. He's in the doorway, but again, object.
For clarity.
This moment.
He's been
The
up there.
objection is to you standing in the doorway.
He's been standing up here the whole
No.
time. Aimed a gun at us yesterday from here. He aimed a gun at us from here yesterday.
He did.
For the goose, good for the gander is a rule, and I can't find it in my rule book.
Well, we're operating with limited space. This is a matter of trial procedures. Extremely unusual for counsel to stand in the locations where counsel have been standing throughout the trial.
It's been awful.
I read the next line.
Yeah, but
It's
that's
been
item
awful.
21
It's
and
been
9.
awful. I will absolutely go look at the whole soliloquy. Thank you, Jordan. Your Honor, he pointed a gun at us yesterday. And the judge is like, as a matter of trial procedure, where you are standing is weird as fuck. Now, of course, that's not exactly what the judge said, but I think what the judge said is go the fuck back to the podium and stay there, because Metters has done this the whole trial, and it's so off-putting. And you saw one of the attorneys being like, what? But the judge still didn't comment on, they pointed a gun at us yesterday. The judge comments on it none. But I'm so glad it came back up. But it very much, especially between Metters and Poot, let me know if it's me. It might be me. Tell me if it's me. If I'm the problem, it's me. Please tell me. At some point, I feel like we are dealing with children in the backseat of a car going, Mom, he's touching me. He's touching me. He's touching me. And the other one going, I'm not touching you. 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 And the judge is like, I'm pulling this trial over. I will pull this trial over. I'm sick of all of you. And I think that he is. Yeah, it's gotten so wild. Okay, everybody's like, yes, this is the vibe. Okay, perfect. We're all perceiving the same vibe. We're all in the same, everybody is acting like exhausted children in the back of a car on a road trip. Good, okay. Well, I mean, the law nerds are on the same page. And there's 30,000 of us that are all on the same page. I figure if it was just me being picky, that y'all would tell me it's just me being picky, because sometimes I am picky. And I know that about myself. Let us continue with your questions. I am watching. I can see the chat in 2 screens. This has actually been very helpful. Everyone's over this trial. I'm over this trial. You're over this trial. We're all over this trial. We're going to set, Miguelina, let's set the premiere of the podcast for 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time so the chat can keep chatting. And then we will premiere that. If you need a palate cleanser for some social media weirdness, today is it. Let me give you a little plug for today's podcast. If I have not already, just we're going to swoop a dupe. Let me just share just real quick. Idaho murder case quadruple homicide, defamation case. The TikToker, psychic tarot card reader who said that the Idaho professor is the one who hired a hit on the 4 victims was sued for defamation. That TikToker has responded and is now suing the professor. Did I not say Central Standard Time? I thought I said Central. 5 p.m. Central. I thought that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Even if it's not what I said. So the TikToker is suing the professor, counterclaiming the professor for defamation, and is representing herself. Representing herself. Some of the members were there in the behind the scenes recording of this podcast. It was a whole lot. Also, there's a default now entered in the case. So we're going to talk about the default being entered. So there's a default, there's an answer, there's a self-representation, there's a counterclaim for defamation. Every YouTube channel you can think of, except for myself and a Tuesday, has been named in it, including iNabber, including Marquee. Maybe she only named British YouTubers. I don't remember the others she named. Maybe she's only going for people across the pond who she can't sue. Is naming YouTubers. It is a palate cleanser. It is wild. Law and Lumber, no, you're not in there. I would have told you. I would have actually sent you the complaint. I might send the other YouTubers the complaint. I just send it to them so they have it. It's just wild. It's just wild. With that, that's the podcast for today. It's on all of your audio podcast formats. It'll be premiering here on the YouTube channel with live chat after this. We're going to get to some more questions because I can't not premiere it. I was like, I'm tired, but also I really need to have a running conversation with you about how crazy it is. When I can have a conversation, when I record the podcast, the members get to chat. I don't really get to engage in the chat because I'm recording, and then I'll get distracted, and then the podcast will never get done. And my editors will be like, what are you doing? We have to put out a podcast. Can we please? But when I get to be in the live chat with you, I get to chat with you. I get to chat with you about all of it. And this we have to talk about. I know I need to send it to iNabber. He's mentioned in it. I need to send it and make sure that if they want to cover it on his channel, that can be done. So I absolutely need to. I don't know. I'm sure it has a public email address, or I will just I will tweet at and be like, yo, do you want this? Your name is in it. Congratulations, boo-boo. All to all the YouTubers who have landed in their first mention in a lawsuit. I feel like it's becoming on the YouTube like rite of passage. It's like, first there's like a dedicated troll that hates you, and then there's, another content creator that talks about you, and then you have like a sponsorship that goes south. What else is on the trajectory of a content creator? Now in that trajectory somewhere is be mentioned in a lawsuit, and maybe have your channel linked in a lawsuit. I think you get bonus points for having your channel linked in a lawsuit. And I've seen so many creators that I know have that happen to them. Apology video is definitely within the lifespan trajectory. Oh, bot spam, that's a big one too. It's just wild. Oh, YouTube bans you. It has to happen at least once. We need like a tier list of the YouTuber experiences. Vicky asked this question way earlier in the day, and I wanted to talk about it because I was asked. I worked with a lot of different police agencies at my time in Los Angeles. Did LAPD ever drop the ball at a crime scene? Generally not at a crime scene. I found LAPD, especially robbery homicide, to be very, very good. And that said, I've also had law enforcement drop the ball with things that they turned over, with things that they didn't go get, with not taking things seriously. I have seen all the law enforcement agencies I work with drop the ball in some way, but it was always human error. I never saw anything where I was like, that feels intentional. So it was bullshit, but it was never actual fuckery. But yes, especially with big law enforcement agencies, things fall through the cracks and things don't get followed up on and things can be a problem. But I've never had a problem where they've actually dropped the ball at a crime scene. Not taking threats seriously enough is one of the bigger issues I had. And then not getting us all the reports so that the defense doesn't get all the reports is one of the bigger issues that I had. And sometimes when there's big investigations, not everybody knows where all the reports are. And sometimes the investigating officer, the lead investigating officer, doesn't know that there's a report from another crime lab because some stuff went to one lab and some stuff went to the other lab and some stuff's at the sheriff's lab. So things not getting all back is a problem. So yes, I have. It pisses me off. But also I hate it when I drop the ball. So if I'm relying on other people and they drop the ball, it always makes me feel responsible. The website crashing, well, the law nerds were trying to sign up for Law Nerd Alert. I felt like personally responsible. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even. We figured it out over lunch today. It was just a bandwidth issue with our website. They're like, oh, you have a lot of traffic. What's happening? And I'm like, can you please handle it though? That's why I pay you to do the things. I don't host myself. And so we sorted it out. But it definitely frustrated me. So sorry, off topic. It's okay. What lip gloss or balm do you wear? I've got two right now. Today, I've been switching between, my beloved Gerard Cosmetics in pink frosting, which I wear quite a lot. And I've been trying out the By Mario. This is in Rosewood, and it's like a glossy balm. So these are the two I've been doing throughout this trial. So that... but thank you for asking. Question, is there anywhere I can watch a recap for the past 22 days? I'm so behind because of my new job. Emma, I feel you. Congratulations on the new job. Here's the thing. There are weeks 1 and 2 are up for Quick Bits, my second channel and my podcast. And with week 1 and 2 being up, I am working on week 3 and 4. So we are going to get there. Do not worry. We will get there. But yes, Quick Bits has roundups and my Quick Bits. There's also a podcast if you want to listen to it in the background and don't pay for YouTube Premium to listen in the background. There's also a podcast. You can just pop it on your audio app if you want to do that. Tamitha said, do you really? No, it doesn't say really. Do you think the quality of Suds' investigation being in the limelight here may cause or force the department to shape up? I think anytime the spotlight is shown on your department, there's an opportunity to evaluate what went wrong. I think a lot of what went wrong in this investigation is deference to Alec Murdaugh. I think that was the first thing that went wrong. And I think that started when they took over the case from the local sheriff. So let's see. Let us continue on. I saw a question. Elizabeth Perez asked, hold on, let me go grab that. Asked, are there no more texts? Texts went out today, or I think they went out today. They should have gone out today unless there was an issue on the back end. Texts should have gone out today. But if they didn't, I will go check the back end. We've had a lot of moving pieces. We have not phased out the text crew. We have added Law Nerd alerts so that our international group can get them. And for those that don't want text alerts, we have it there. The app updates from Patreon are also very helpful. Patreon's rolling out some new features that should make that more accessible. So a lot of you are saying didn't get a text today. Okay, I'll figure out what's going on with that. So we just have a lot of moving pieces, and some days are not great. But here's the thing. I will be here every day at the same time until this trial is over. So you know where to find me. Rosie, if Alec Murdaugh testifies and is asked about the money, can he just say it's ongoing litigation, I can't comment? Or can his lawyer interject? How does that work? That's what they're trying to figure out with the judge. I thought they were going to address it at the end of the day today. The defense said we're going to address it at the end of the day today, but then they didn't. So we'll see. Mellow Disco said, isn't that why Firo is hired? I don't know. They do 3D. I don't know what this is relating to earlier in the day, but thank you for the input. Debbie said, who is the older sharp-dressed man that sits behind Alec every day? I don't know. I know that a lot of them have different types of what looks like law enforcement pins, but I don't know who they are, and I haven't seen anyone identify them. Question, where do you like living better, Tennessee or California? What do you miss about California? I have 2 podcast episodes of The Emily Show where I talk about moving from California to Tennessee that are available on The Emily Show podcast feed back when it was Get Legit. And I love living in Tennessee. I miss family and friends in California, but I absolutely love living in Tennessee. I love the space. I love the weather. Most of the time, I love the smaller class sizes. I love less traffic. I love trees that change seasons. I love that we can hear the water flowing behind our house and the river behind our house. I love the wild turkeys that roam through the yard. I love seeing deer as long as they're not jumping in front of my car. I love it. Katie said, is it normal for jurors? I love being able to go hike more easily. I miss that so much. Is it normal for jurors to be able to submit questions for witnesses? It depends on the jurisdiction. So I don't know how to say normal because it happens. So it is not uncommon, but it happens depending on the jurisdiction, and not all jurisdictions allow it. Some jurisdictions do not allow it at all. Paula said, watch AM say I hired someone because he knows he can't be convicted of that since prosecution isn't going for that, but there was no evidence of anyone else being there, footprints, DNA, etc. There's that. I don't know what he'll say. Jay said, Emily, I know you're enjoying the super chats and having lots of content to cover. Are you with me in saying you can't wait for this trial to be over? Oh, Jay, I can't wait. I can't wait for this trial to be over. I am still confused. I am tired. I am annoyed with the attorneys. And the more it wears on, the more it wears on, right? So I enjoy content creation. I love live trial coverage. Part of live trial coverage is getting through the boring bits. There were bits of Dep V heard that were slow and boring too. There were those days of the video depositions where we're like, oh my God, please stop. So there are days. There are days like this. It has just gotten. Casey Cat said I can get steps on Pokemon by taping my phone to the ceiling fan. I know lots have done that. Emily EDB, thanks for bringing a little lightness to this heavy case. It's been long for us, but longer for the community who lost so many young people. It is. This community has had a lot going on. Just a lot going on. Gosara, they're using trial director by iPro, no public price. Rob was asking too. There we go. Trial director by iPro. That's the defense's case. So if there's no public price, I'm sure there's a way that attorneys can get it. Light Software, Light Suite has Apple sale. Okay, thank you. Matt Bond, good to see you. We all know this is from Pokemon Go hack research. Yes, it is. The stepdata is totally from Pokemon Go hack research. All of it. Lady Picture Show 66. Been a long day with sick kiddos. I know those days. But this lovely community has helped me feel like I have adults to converse with. Also, my I Have Questions shirt just came. Thanks, you're welcome. Mine is on my body today. On my body today. Piney Woods Law and Crime. This guy confused indigent and indigenous in describing his pro bono work. I don't know what that is. I missed all of that, so apologies. If cell service was spotty at the property, then why didn't Alec go to the kennels to let his wife and son know he was leaving when he couldn't reach them? Lisa Marie, it's a valid question. Why didn't they? Why didn't they? Donna said, you missed the dinner offer from the defense to the prosecution after allowing late admission of evidence. My first thought was bribe. Okay. I don't know. I'll have to go look. Steps are not accurate. I used to hack my Fitbit count by shaking my hand for minutes at a time. I think what they said truly was steps are more accurate than GPS or than distance. Emily, please babysit us Friday. Rob is gone. I think aren't Rob and Runkles going to the Gundys? I will be here streaming trial all day, but then on Friday by the time we are done with trial all day, I will be tired. Can we have the cat zoom guy meme that you use? Cat zoom. Oh, the overlay, Rachel. I haven't added my overlays to the new computer when I switched over to a new computer. So I can't do lawyer cat yet, but I will find lawyer cat before the end of the trial. I just I've not put it. There are things I need on my soundboard and there are things I need on the computer that I just have not had a time to do. Emily, can you please give your thoughts on the verdict? Because I think he did it. Real life living. I think there are plenty of people who think they did it in one, who either think he did it, think he was involved in it, or think he didn't do it, or think that the state hasn't proven it. But no, we're not at the end yet, and I don't know. I'm at the place where we're not done, and if I had to vote today, I don't know what that vote would be. Because I truly just don't know yet. So I am very much trying to keep an open mind, and I am very much trying to. Now, the defense is in the hard position, right? The prosecution has the burden of proof. The defense pokes holes, but then everybody measures the defense's case against the prosecution's. Well, they said this and they said this. And so they're absolutely going that way. What's here, what's there, and how does it fit together? If a mistrial, how do they get an untainted jury? In this case, I don't even know. But they look for people who didn't watch it. There are some people who just don't watch court all day. I don't know her. She doesn't go here. But there are some people that don't just watch court all day. Wait, is Alec taking a stand? So, Steph. Okay, so. Oh, wait, no, we want this.
Okay, so here. At the beginning of the day, the defense attorneys asked the judge to limit Alec's testimony if he testifies. So I very much am interested to see if he testifies tomorrow. And they said that it wouldn't be today, but it would be tomorrow, and they would need a ruling. So tomorrow morning, when everyone gets into court, Emily's going to be early. I promise. Not early, on time, which is early for me, but on time. Because when court starts tomorrow, we'll see if the defense asks again for a ruling, and the judge will have to admonish Alec if he's going to take the stand. So we will know tomorrow. So that's the tea we're holding out for tomorrow.
And then we'll see. So we needed the Goss voice. That's the voice for the juicy Goss. How long till closing starts? Oh, Jamie. If I had to guess right now, at least a week. At least a week. At least a week. Yeah, at least next Wednesday. Missy W said too many expert opinions with incomplete info. No good. I think everybody's got incomplete info with this. Fierce Shorty or Shoddy said, EDB, the housekeeper hugged John Marvin after her testimony. Your thoughts? I didn't see it and I didn't see the testimony, but I will say, this case or not, everything that's going on in this case or not, especially when we're talking about Miss Libby and Randolph, those who are caregivers to Libby and Randolph seem to have a very good relationship with this family. And I don't know if this changes the good relationship with the family for John Marvin or for his brother. I mean, I don't think you hold against John Marvin what Alec did. Even if Alec's convicted, I don't think it changes. I think it just puts this family through more pain. And I think that they are still cared for. It seems that the people in the lives, especially of Libby and Randolph, care for them very deeply and have a good relationship with them. So I'm not surprised by that. And I don't think it's a problem. I think this whole community is in pain. I really do. And I think there's a lot of hurt. And I think Alec caused a lot of that hurt, whether he committed these murders or not, whether they prove that he did or not. I think that a lot of hurt has happened in this community. So I'm not surprised. So those are my thoughts. We saw this with, and he got kind of skewered for it, but we saw this with Andy Cohen when Jen Shaw pled. He kind of made some statements like, I hope, or maybe it was before that, I hope she didn't do it. I know her. And you could see him kind of grappling in real time on the radio show with, how could someone I know do something so awful? You know, how could someone I know who I enjoyed defraud the elderly, take from people who have nothing and take more? And you see a struggle. And I think a lot of people have never been in that circumstance where you've had a loved one involved with criminality, or you've had someone in your family accused of criminality, or you've dealt with it. But I think people are torn on how to deal with it because they're trying to deal with the acts of a person and the person they know. And being a human is so messy, so messy. So I think we're seeing a lot of that struggle in this case with everyone who is involved with this. And you see the hurt and the frustration and the anger, especially with regard to the thefts. And it's hard to rectify. But we see this in relationships too, right? When you break up with somebody because they've hurt you, or because they've cheated on you, or because they've done whatever, and there's the feelings don't just shut off sometimes, you know? And so being a human is messy. Emotions can be messy. And so I don't really judge that there's still care there for John Marvin and for this family. So closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Matt Bond is telling me it is twinkle, twinkle time. It is, because then we've got a premiere. Buster said he had a gun loaded for turkey hunting. Wasn't turkey season over before June? I have no idea when turkey season is. I know more about turkey load and mixed load and front to back and all the rest of it than I ever thought I would in this case. It's been wild. Samantha Butts, I don't know why anyone would complain about your commentary. There are some who don't know what I do on my channel and pop in and are like, why is she talking? It's like, oh, it's okay. It's not for you. It's okay, boo-boo. They're the same people. Well, often there's a high correlation to people are like, wait, you're a lawyer? You have purple hair. There's a high correlation. It's okay. There's plenty of lawyers that don't have purple hair. You can go watch them. Question, the AR went missing on March 13th, but he wasn't confronted about the finances till June 7th. Why would the gun be missing before? I don't think the AR was missing before. The replacement that we're talking about, the replacement AR wasn't missing. The replacement AR, unless somebody said it was missing that I missed, I thought the replacement AR, they didn't know it was missing till after the murders happened, because they were citing it in April, May. They were citing in the red dot in April, May, but that had been purchased much earlier. And the other one went missing in 2018 at a party. So it wasn't that close in time. And with that, y'all, we're going to premiere that. I'm going to go check in on the kiddos. I will be back in the chat for the premiere of this week's podcast. I think it's a little bit long. I think it is. I think it's long and strong and down to, you know how it is. Let me go. Yeah, it's an hour and 19 minutes long. Grab a snack and I will see you over in the premiere of the Emily Show podcast. According to Buster, it was never replaced. Yes, but according to the paperwork, it was replaced. And according to the records, it was replaced. I think Buster just didn't know he wasn't living there. So with all of that, thank you all. I will see you soon. I'm going to go get a snack too. It's time for a snacky snack and to talk about TikTok sidekicks. So there's a link to premiere, and this, Miguelina, this is going to dump right into the premiere, right? Where it's just going to redirect. So it'll just redirect you over there. So don't even worry about it. And I will see you in just a few minutes. All right, bye.
You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at The Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.